Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the July 15, 2019 Board of Selectmen meeting. Before we get started, if everyone could rise, please, for our invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Dear Lord, as we gather for this meeting, give us the use of your gift of peace and understanding, that we may approach the matters we must handle with sincere and just hearts. We thank you for your guidance in our decision-making, and we ask that we receive it again today. And as always, Father, for those that chose to pray with us, we each pray to you in the manner we were taught. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I want to welcome everyone in the crowd this evening and everyone watching from home. Certainly appreciate you taking the time. As always, I'll try to get everyone in the crowd out of here as soon as possible. Do have a number of people here this evening, so if you could be as patient as possible as well. First and foremost, we do have a 7 o'clock public hearing. Public hearing was continued from April 22nd, 2019. SQF LLC Tilson had a request to place a new utility pole for an AT&T small wireless facility in the public right away. So I do have to open up a public meeting, or hearing, excuse me, for that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any, is there any updates on that we need to know about, or?
No, we're still waiting for the light department to work out. And then we'll be able to piggyback on anything that they come up with.
Okay. All right. Any comments from the board? Anybody in the crowd on that?
So, Mike, have you been meeting with, when they meet with Dave Schofield?
No, I haven't met.
So there's no new information over there?
Nothing new. We talk to Dave once a week, and he had nothing new to report.
Okay, anybody else? Anybody? Okay,
Thank you.
with anything, I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
You have a second?
We have to
Have to make a motion to continue.
continue it to a date certain.
Oh, we have to mention with a certain.
Yes.
What's that date again?
September 9th.
Thank you. All right, so, sorry about that, my computer's down. I'm gonna move to continue the public hearing for SQF LLC Tilson to replace a new utility pole for an AT&T small wireless facility in the public right of way to Monday, September 9th, 2019 at 7 o'clock.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks for the patience, everyone. Thank you, Kim.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. See if this thing will start working. Nothing goes first? Go figure, right? All right, so first and foremost, we have, let's see, the request from Essex County Greenbelt for the 5th Road Cycling Event, September 21st, to travel through town. Why don't you come on up? How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
If you could introduce yourself, please.
My name is Jane Rumrill. I'm the events coordinator at Essex County Greenbelt.
It's Jane, right?
Jane, yep.
Welcome, Jane.
Thank you.
So Jane, why don't you tell us a little bit about the cycling event, and then we'll just have some questions. We'll get you out of it.
Sure thing. Yeah, so Greenbelt is a land trust and conservation organization, so this is one of our annual fundraisers. It's just a cycling event, not a race. And we have 3 routes, a 50-mile route, which would go through Georgetown, a 25-mile route that doesn't, and new since last year is a trail route that just barely squeaks through Georgetown through the state forest. So we are asking permission to go on a couple of roads on September 21st. It would come from Newbury down North Street, and then go down Route 97, and then turn onto Nelson Street before going into the next town.
Okay. All information's in, Janet?
Yes, and she talked to Scott Hatch and he okayed the route.
You did? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jane. Any questions from the board?
Is this the 5th year that you've come through Georgetown?
Yep, 5th year.
Great.
Yep.
What's the date again?
September 21st, Saturday.
How would it be to change the route if it had to be changed because we were doing road work on North Street?
Oh, we could look into changing the route.
I could let you know,
Yeah.
Probably next week I could let you know by then,
Okay, yeah.
what the dates are, hopefully before then, but.
Okay. Yeah, no, we could, it's not impossible to change the route. I mean, we only go just,
Yep.
yeah, so.
So that date is September 21st.
Yes.
Are you gonna be actually working on that date?
I'm gonna find out this week when we're gonna be actually doing the work on North Street. We're gonna start doing work now. We have to do some drainage work before we, reclaim and repave the road, so.
Do you think if you guys weren't working on that road that it's still passable? That they could still have the event? You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, maybe,
It depends, if it's, just the drainage, it's definitely passable, but if it's reclaimed, it's gonna be down to, a gravel road.
Right.
But I can find out and let you know
Okay.
sooner than later, like I can find out hopefully this week when they can schedule me in.
Okay. I'm Jane.
Peter Durkee.
Peter. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
so how do we wanna, you wanna let, I guess, Janet know, or,
Yep.
if
Okay.
there's an alternate, and then vice versa, Pete, if you, I mean, I guess easiest if there's any way you can maybe do another day,
Or I
or
would,
if
no,
it's
I would do
passable.
it, I hope to do it before September 21st, I hope
Yeah.
to have it done.
Oh, okay. Let's hope that's the case, you'll have a smoother road.
Yeah, that'd be nice. If it does need to be changed, should I come back to you guys with a different route, or
No.
is it, okay?
No, I don't think we would have to, I mean, I guess, work with Janet in our, police department, and they'll locate the route, and I think we're good.
Okay, great.
All right, questions? Doug, you all set? Any other questions? Go ahead, Gary.
Just an interesting point that Peter is here, and perhaps in the future, do we want to change our policy to include checking with Peter the dates and that? You know, we do check with PD and that. 'Cause we do, what, 5, 6 of these, probably even more a year? I mean, we've got a cover letter that they check with people. I mean, it might be a good idea just to add to that.
That is a good idea.
Yeah.
Yep. And actually, I don't think, Peter has to attend though, Mike,
No,
if you
that's not
can-
what I mean.
Yeah, I know.
Just,
So I was gonna say, so Mike, if you could, check with Peter on that, before these meetings, I think that's a good point. You can do that. Any other questions? No? All right, do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the plan as presented for the Greenbelt race on September 21st, 2019.
Pending. Do we have to put a pending in there? No?
second.
Saved by the bell.
Or subject to the noted changes if the road is gonna be under construction? Cause we've already
Yeah,
said
I
we don't have
agree.
an issue, right?
Yeah, we don't have an issue issuing, the license for it. I mean, I think it's just a matter of, where it is and.
Those logistics will be worked out though between Jane and Peter and the police department.
Yeah.
We're just granting
Mike,
the
is
okay.
that all right if we just leave it at that? Yeah, so we'll just leave it at that. All right, so we have a motion. Did anyone, we had a second. Any other further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good luck, Gene.
Thank you so
Have
much.
a great event.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, to get here and talk about the harbor master thing. Seems like a lot of people are as well. So why don't we take, oh, actually, no, Peter. I know you have, I told Peter you can attend, and then he has a shift he has to head to, so. For the board, I invited Peter here because he could not make the last meeting in regards to tree warden. There was a request from Ida Y for appointment as tree warden, so I
Just a
invited Peter
one-page, Peter?
to talk about that and also answer any questions that the board might have. So Peter, thank you for taking the time. Certainly appreciate it. So as I said last meeting, we did hear from Ms. Y about her interest in tree warden. You have been a tree warden now for 10 years in town, correct?
12, I'm in my 13th now.
12, 13, that was close. All right. And in that time, I believe you've done a really good job. We certainly appreciate it. So with that being said, I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to open it up for questions from the board that you might have for Peter. And then we'll send it on your way, okay? Who has questions for Peter?
So other than what's in this section
The
87?
lower paragraph is the powers of the tree warden, the
Right.
second paragraph.
That's the state, but we don't have anything within the town.
No, that's the powers of the tree warden.
Right. Given in chapter 87 of the state statute.
Yeah, I don't know of any in the town.
There isn't.
I'll start if
Okay.
as you know, we had someone else here in front of us. I talked to you after that last meeting, explained why I voted as I did. I more look at what the tree warden has done over the years, what I've seen as more public safety. I don't know if
We
that's
don't,
like-
we have planted trees, but we haven't planted a lot. We don't have a budget to plant trees. We have a small budget. It's $12,000. So we don't prune trees. If we cut down dead trees that are dangerous, and if the bucket is in the air and they're cutting down a tree over here, and there's a dead branch over here, they'll cut the dead branch. But if somebody calls up and says, "I have a dead branch," we just don't have the money to cut it unless we can cut it ourselves, or I can ask the light department. So
I think one of the questions I also had, now, and to me, what you're mentioning is more on the route of, to me, public safety.
Yep.
If you're taking care of the trees that are possibly gonna fall and do harm.
Yep.
Now you
And we
are-
prune, we have a brush machine that the light department purchased for the town, I think it was 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and we use that to cut the brush on the side of the road.
Now, that was gonna be my question.
And there's one person that drives it, and I think I've received one complaint from that, because that thing, it devastates.
It's a hatchet.
It is. So sometimes you have to be careful near people's houses, and he knows, and he goes by that, and we go back and hand prune it.
But now, what section of your budget, does that come under tree warden budget, or does that come under highway sub budget, or do you just sort of?
I would say it comes on the
Mingle it.
highway, but it's, we go out and just prune the side of the road, the 5 to 8 feet near the road,
Yeah.
the right of way.
Yeah, so, but you feel that most of that typically comes under your
Yeah, we-
maintaining the roads under the highway?
Yep, because, to fuel it, we just purchased a new head for it. It's over 10 years old, and it's, a lot of welds are cracked, so we bought a new head for it, so that should be coming in shortly.
And you now have to be, from what I understand, licensed to drive
Oh, yeah.
that, yeah.
Yep, and I have one person that's licensed, and
So I guess where I would go, just for the board and for the public, I mean, at the last meeting when we put forward, vote for Peter, I voted nay because of the fact that, and we've also got it in our packet tonight, about, in the past, trying to combine the position of tree warden, highway surveyor. And I would like to look into that. I mean, if you wanna move forward, I don't know where you hope to go tonight, Mr. Chair, whether you hope to get Peter appointed,
I do.
okay, so if that's what you do, well, I'd like some type of commitment from this board to look at, should we combine that position so that in the future, we're not here. I mean, I guess it was tried in the past, failed. I don't know, Mike, did you have time since our last meeting? You've been on vacation and then you were away for a couple days for training. So you probably didn't have time to look up with, I know we discussed to try to find out whether legally we could make that move.
No, I did not
Yeah.
do any further research.
I'd like to keep that under
Okay.
some sort of old business, whether we can do that. To me, the jobs have always gone together.
Sure.
Unless we, as a town, I guess, hear something from townspeople who want our tree warden to be what he said. But as he said, we don't have the budget for a lot of what it says here. So I think of it more as public safety.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question, please?
Yeah, you done?
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Go ahead.
Pete, you don't have a separate group or a person or persons that are the tree department. It's your highway guys are
Yep.
doing double duty. So you're already managing these folks day to day,
Yep.
their schedule, et cetera, et cetera. Okay.
So it kind of goes to Gary's point.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I
Yep.
was clear.
I think they tried to do it in '97 to try to combine both, and there was a motion, and then it was voted on incorrectly, and so it's something that can be just a motion at a town meeting, and it doesn't seem too hard to me.
Okay.
So,
It was actually in 1985.
Close though.
Just a clarification on a point of order. So last meeting, we voted on this. It was a 2-2 tie. So it remains in effect, right? He remains as tree warden, so wouldn't that stay in effect now? Would we need to vote again?
He would be considered a holdover if you don't make an appointment. But you can,
2-2 is a nay. Doesn't
So it
pass.
stays as is?
Right.
So
Yeah.
he remains as tree warden?
yeah,
Right.
but the appointment expired June 30th.
Okay.
The way appointments work, if no one is appointed in place of them, of the appointee, then the incumbent is considered a holdover until a majority vote occurs for the appointment.
Gotcha, okay. That's all I have.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Do I have a motion then?
Yes. I'd like to make a motion, have Peter Durkee, appointed as tree warden until, what is the date?
June
term?
30th, 2022.
30th,
2022.
2022.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. You have a motion, a second. Any further discussion?
I have discussion. I will not be voting on this because we do not have the complete package that Ms. Y sent to us. And I think that, not that anything in the package would sway the vote, but I think it's important that the information that comes into the Board of Selectmen's office does not get filtered and kept away from the board. So until I have a full package, I can't vote on it. I'll be abstaining.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Just, we are going to follow up on whether we can,
Yep. Certainly.
okay.
Because I agree with that. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Opposed?
Abstain.
Peter, thank you for the
Thank
time.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Peter.
coming in. All right, so all those that are here, police chief discussion on the harbor master and crossing guards, right? That's what everyone's here for?
You, Mr. Chairman.
Chiefs, how are you?
Good, how are you?
good for you.
Both looking very tan.
Yeah,
You having a
It's
good
called the
summer?
4th of July.
yeah, it's called vacation.
It's the one time a year that you can have some fun, right?
Yeah.
Good evening, and thank you for having this put on the agenda, because there's a couple of things in play with regard to the Harbor Master Program, and specifically it includes the equipment analysis that the fire chief and I have been doing probably for the last year or so. And it certainly does affect the Harbor Master Program, which later on in your agenda, you'll see that it will be a topic of discussion once the Rock Pond Bylaw Committee that you appointed also presents to the board. But to begin with regard to the Harbor Master Program as a whole versus the public safety and the rescue component that the fire department would provide, the Harbor Master Program many years ago was monitored by civilian personnel who quasi-reported to the police department, and having civilians utilizing enforcement authority in that venue became problematic right around 2009. Things had changed a little bit. The town obviously got a little busier, and we elected to forego the civilian component and attempt to have police officers cover the Harbor Master Program. There's no budget for the Harbor Master Program. Just like the tree warden, it's just another extension of the PD, a clearinghouse for calls and so forth. I don't have personnel permanently assigned. At one point 3 years ago, I had a full-time officer. I attempted to have him, as I do the animal control program, deal with the Harbor Master issues. In Georgetown, we have Rock Pond, Pentucket Pond, and then we have the shoreline of Baldpate Pond, because we own property where Camp Dennison is all the way down to the Noonan Creek, as we call it. So we do have 3 locations, plus the Parker River entrance where we had an incident back in November, as people probably saw on television. So the goal of the Harbor Master Program, when I had that full-time person, enforcement, yes, but more protection of our waters and trying to work with the Conservation Commission with issues that could arise on those ponds. Obviously, enforcement becomes an issue with complaints with boats. The mixed use on our ponds is problematic. Boats versus canoeing, kayak, recreation, passive recreation. Just like in the state forest when we dealt with ATVs, motorcycles, and horses, and bird watchers, and hunters, and there's only so much land to go around, just like there's only so much water. So that full-time officer, we began a decent program. We tried to work with the Conservation Commission, and Steve is in the audience. We're going to attempt GISing our docks and so forth, so we knew what was in the pond, protect the pond, our boat ramp. The lack of a proper boat ramp at Pentucket is problematic for access. And that officer suddenly lateraled back to Beverly. We lost our full-time officer, so I lost his expertise. He was a certified harbor master. Since then, I've been utilizing part-time officers. I am the appointed harbor master, so that there is someone at the helm, no pun intended, to try and at least keep track of what we're doing. So moving forward, in order to enforce on the pond, you need a boat. So 3 years ago, I went out and I surplused a boat with the GSA, went to Wellfleet, got the only boat that was out there for nothing. And you know what you get when you get something for nothing. You get nothing. Nothing. Zero, zilch, negative. So it's done its job up to that point. We're using our personal craft now. I use my boat. I have an officer, so that we can attempt to do some access to the pond, no rescue whatsoever. And the chief and I will discuss that later on. But so that's problematic. And so with the creation of the bylaw committee and the issues that residents are having on Rock Pond, and the lack of local bylaw, this Chapter 90B Mass General Law, but my police officers, they're not on boats, they're in cars. It's difficult to enforce water laws when you're in a motor vehicle or on the shoreline. And to police it at the level it could or it needs to be policed so that you can potentially deal with violators is problematic for me, because I don't have that personnel. Not every police officer in Georgetown is trained on 90B, especially boating laws. So, we come to the table with those challenges. Moving forward, and I'll address the enforcement issues once that committee presents, because I'm sure that's why I'm here, to answer some additional questions relative to calls for service and what's going on out there. The need has now come to light, especially given the November incident, and we had an incident in May, where our fire department is now employing full-time staff. We need the appropriate boat in the event we need to rescue or perform a rescue on these bodies of water. We just don't have that. In May, we had a report of a canoe tip over and with multiple people in the water on Pentucket. Happened to be a training exercise that no one knew about with the camp, training their staff how to deal with that situation. Passerbys called 911. The only deployment that this town has relative to an incident like that was for the fire chief to call for mutual aid. Well, that's going to take 20 minutes to a half hour. So if we have people in the water, it's just not going to be effective. Yes, I have that 1-ton ship that sits up in the back of the PD, but only having 3 officers on duty and none of them are certified. Of the officers who are certified to get in a boat, I only have 3, myself and 2 others. We're not going to be able to deploy a boat quick enough and not have that tool and resource to save someone. So it's a parallel situation that we're dealing with. We're dealing with enforcement, we're dealing with rescue. So the fire chief is here because we took a look at a boat. It's a very simplistic rescue boat. I'll let him speak on it because traditionally in public safety, it's the fire department who deploys boats. You don't see police cruisers towing boats except in Georgetown because I have my harbor master boat. Should be deployed out of the fire department. He has full-time staff now, and that so we can be prepared in the event a resident's in peril or we have someone who's visiting our ponds. So I brought a photograph of that. So that's the first component with regard to why I'm here. And like I said, I'll await the committee's report. And I'm sure some residents have some things to say about the about that. So Chief, if you want to discuss this. I apologize for the photograph. My finger was right on the lens. And I was in a rush. I took the picture and drove away and I said, well, that was really good. But you get the gist of it. You're looking at about a $15,000 purchase. It's a Zodiac style, hard bottom. They call it, you know, by definition, it could be considered a safe boat without a hard top. And you'd put a 25 Yamaha 4-stroke engine on that boat. It's not about speed, it's about deployment. You can see the handles on that boat. You can carry that boat onto a beach, onto a shoreline, and you can effect a rescue very quickly. You don't need a launch, you don't need a ramp, and that's the purpose of this style of boat. And given our need and our lack of equipment in this area for many years, we've been just kind of punting it down the road. That's where we're at, so go ahead, Chief.
Just first thing on the on this type of response, just keep this in mind that it's a high-risk response, low frequency, but we need to be prepared to respond in the event of an emergency on the water, especially with the amount of body of water that we have in our town. The boat that we properly have in the fire department is not conducive to rescuing, pulling somebody out of the water. It's a metal boat. It's more like a small fishing boat that on a Saturday morning, someone going out and just throwing a rod in, you know, the water to catch some fish on a Saturday morning. So this boat here is specifically made to hold up to 3 people. And
more.
also, well,
You could go
and
4
also be able to pull people out of the water without tipping the boat, because the way that it's kind of like a pontoon, so when you shift your weight, the boat shifts a little bit, but it's not going to go kind of like this. The other thing too is with regards to the boat, you can also use it for ice rescue as well. We have a sled, the ice rescue sled, but that with the military grade bottom, you can drag that out, use it out in a piece of area that the ice has let go, and use it as a staging area for the divers. Because the other thing too is, keep this in mind, anytime we call for the dive team, it's a regional response. So that's going to go through our control point in Andover. Beverly is our dive team, so they would respond in any type of water incident. As the chief alluded to, right now we're using mutual aid, Boxford and West Newbury, to have their boats automatically respond in the event of any type of water incident in town right now as we speak. So, you know, my feeling has always been, and I've had conversations with the chief, is because we're such a small town and with 2 small agencies that respond on everything together, I have my boat, he has his boat. Why don't we have one boat, Georgetown Public Safety? It's more cost effective. We'll house it, we'll respond with it, and we're gonna work together anyways. So it just, to me, from my professional opinion, makes more sense to take what we have and just kind of move it aside, surplus it, whatever, and get something that we need, that's gonna serve this town and its community for a long time, because it's not like we're gonna need to buy a boat every 5 or 10 years. We maintain the boat, we maintain our equipment, that should last a long time. In lieu of that, going forward, we should also look to have something to tow it with. Because right now, I'm towing a boat with the engine. Because when I first got here, we had a surplus Army pickup truck that had a skid unit in the back for brush fires. Well, the front end was falling out of it. So we ended up getting rid of it. Through capital improvement, I've always asked for a pickup truck. Problem is, capital improvement doesn't always get funded, or it gets kind of pushed down the can. So in lieu of this, is to also purchase, and I've got some quick prices here, I did some research today, is to have a truck to tow it as well. Again, it's high risk, low frequency, and the other thing too, as more I started thinking about this today, is not to get off the beaten path, but you've got the rail trail coming in, we still have the state forest, we can get a pickup truck with a small skid unit, with an area to put a Stokes basket on it. We can get into the woods if we have people lost in the woods, if we get spot fires in the woods, we can easily access that. So that's kind of, part of from my professional opinion, what we need to serve the town and kind of kill a few birds with one stone, so to speak, with one purchase.
And how much are we talking about?
Well, the boat itself is, the quote we got today was $14,966.
Is that used or is it new?
That's brand new.
Brand new.
Brand new. The whole thing with, the quote that we have is all new.
Okay.
Joe, can I ask a question, please?
So, but I mean, hold on one second, guys. So
And-
you also mentioned though you wanted a trailer?
Well, that comes with the trailer.
Oh, it comes with the trailer.
Comes with the trailer, then we'll be looking at a pickup truck, a heavy-duty pickup truck, something not as what Peter has, but something not with the 4-door cab, a cab and a half, pickup, heavy-duty to be able to house a skid unit in the back and also tow the boat as
Okay.
well.
And where is that money coming out of?
It's,
Do we have money anywhere allocated for this?
it's
No?
no, not yet. That's what we're gonna start digging for.
Okay.
So, but I just wanted to bring this up as part of, as the initiative going forward to look to kind of streamline to get to one boat that's capable of serving the community. And not have the boat sitting there and not be able to tow it or anything. Because I've got a couple of members towing it with their private vehicles, and I'm not comfortable with that.
The current boat we have.
Yeah.
Okay. Are they gonna hold, well, so there are plenty of these, I would
Yeah,
add.
yeah.
So it's,
Yeah.
all right, David.
The boat comes with the 4-stroke 25 horsepower
Yes,
Yamaha,
yep,
plus
with
the
a
trailer.
20-inch shaft.
Yep.
Yep.
And then, as you know, I'm pretty familiar. Low maintenance on those motors, so that's good.
It's the
And
best motor, in my opinion.
Best, that, and yep, I would agree. The question I have is relative to the truck. So, the heavy-duty pickup truck can be used for both towing the boat and for other
Yes,
needs
yeah,
in either department.
yeah.
I would defer any use of the truck to the fire department. I have my own fleet.
Yep.
If in what I believe to be a deployment strategy and plan between the departments, if I need access to that boat, then the fire department will deploy that boat, and then whatever assets I provide, whether it be manpower, and whichever pond or activity I have,
Yep.
we can use it jointly, and most communities do that. I received the free boat and obtained it in an attempt to try and create a program that had no funding. And with losing the personnel, I've taken the boat out of service. I'm not going to let anybody operate it. It's sitting down front if anybody wants to go take a look at it. I put it on display down there. It's clean and it looks good. But if you're a boater, I'm an avid boater. I own 3 boats, and I wouldn't want that thing. It's got a 90 Merc on it, 2-stroke, smoky, loud, gross. It is what it is. It's time to go. We need to move on and be able to. The May call, when I met with the fire chief after that call, was a cold May, rainy day, And when that happened, and we all proceeded to Pentucket Pond, if there were people in the water there, it was gonna be a problem. It was gonna be a tragedy. And a town with 3 bodies of water and an entry into Parker River should have a boat. I mean, it just doesn't even make any sense to me. It's been illogical for a long time. We need it. And I think that the operation of the fire department has changed when we got the ambulance service. Now there's full-time staff on board. I would assume the chief will train someone to be in charge of that Marine unit and have knowledge and direct hands-on experience in launching that piece of equipment. It's an important asset for our community. And I think our residents would agree. And I think our residents think that we can go rescue someone on the water, and we can't. I don't have someone sitting in the station waiting to rescue someone in the water. It just doesn't, it's not there.
So the last question I have is there any saleable value from what we have now?
I got my boat for nothing, so I have to work with GSA to give it back to them and take the stickers off it. So you're not gonna get any money from me, unless they just give it to us, and I wholesale it through propertyroom.com at auction. I'm surprised they're not gonna make me pay to get rid of it.
I don't,
So I'm praying I can just get it, make it go away.
to answer your question, Dave, I don't think there's really a lot of value there. For the assets that we have for the boats, it's minimal.
His metal John boat, the one that flipped over in the Parker River, never should have been deployed that day in the capacity it was deployed. It was a perfect storm, wind, there was an eddy out there, it just shouldn't have happened, but it did, so we dealt with it. Lessons learned, everyone was trying to do the right thing, and that's what's important. And then the other boat is my old boat, my old aluminum boat I gave to him, because I didn't want it anymore. So that's our fleet. It's a very tired, sad fleet.
Yeah, we can put it on the Merrimack and it'll just eat it.
Yeah. Great.
It'll be like acid.
Hey, I was out there this weekend, it's not that bad.
It's not that bad. I was out there.
Go ahead, Doug.
So I have a couple of questions for you. Call it $15,000, that's
Yep.
for boat, motor, and trailer.
Yep.
And what do you estimate for a cost on a pickup truck?
Well, I've got a couple of, I reached out, I've got Peter's quote for his pickup, which was roughly 51,000. I don't, but his
This is a 3,500.
3,500, I don't think we need that, so I don't anticipate that. I did reach out to the Andover chief, Chief Mansfield, and he had a $70,000 budget for a vehicle, what I had described, and just his Chevy Silverado 2,500 heavy-duty four-wheel drive on the off the state bid list was $28,799. And then the skid unit was another, it was a $16,995. But the skid units that I've looked online, we can get that for cheaper as well. And then
You're looking for roughly 75 grand, everything brand new?
with the trailer, the boat, and the truck, guesstimate, yeah. I'd want to fine tune the numbers, but off the top
Well,
of my head,
just
yeah.
a guess.
Right, yeah, guesstimate, yeah.
So one other thing. So do firefighters through their firefighter training,
Mhm.
I guess they go through water safety training also during that?
Yeah,
So
we-
they would already be qualified too, or would they need further training?
Part of anything on the water is considered a technical rescue, special operations. And we have training for that on a yearly basis. A couple of years ago, I brought an instructor in from the outside to do ice rescue training. Third party, we spent the day out on Rock Pond, cut some holes in the ice, and the members learned some different techniques. The same instructor, I would bring him in to do swift water rescue, which would also assist in deploying of the boat on the ponds.
Okay, but, all right.
The guys
So
have been,
it's-
in the training in the past,
Yeah,
so.
all right. So it's been additional training. You have, the people you have
Yeah.
could be
Be-
certified to
Yeah.
do that, per
Yeah.
se.
Yep.
All right, that's fine.
Questions?
Yeah,
Good.
first, I think it's a great idea, and I know how hard it is to pull somebody in a boat, like the metal one you're talking about, versus this one, you know, obviously, this can be used both, like you said, in the summer and for an ice rescue. The only thing I'll ask you is that, is it actually big enough? You said it can hold 3 people, so if you've got a couple of rescuers on the boat, and you got multiple people that fall out of a boat, I mean, is it scalable enough?
Well, I think if you take a look at a water rescue, multiple water rescue, and you look at the boat and the size of the boat that you're gonna use to provide that rescue tactic, a larger boat's more difficult to deploy. And it's not about speed and the size of engine on a boat, it's about being able to deploy that boat. If you get any larger, 6 or 8 firefighters, and if they want the police to give them a hand and get that boat in the water, you want to be able to deploy that boat on a shore line, off one of our culverts, without having a ramp. You go any larger than 15 on that, then you're gonna have to probably put a 40 on it. It's gonna get heavy. It's gonna get heavy. And,
It jumps
if
that
you're
big.
doing a multiple person rescue, then you're going to be using flotation devices. You're gonna use tactics that are gonna be able to not pull everybody out at once, but you're gonna be able to provide that rescue effort and get those folks out of the water.
And the dimensions for the boat, just to follow up with Chief Cudmore's comments, is 15 feet, 6 inches long.
It is that big?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing too is we're still gonna have a multiple agency response. We're still gonna rely on mutual aid because, like, we're gonna need a backup anyways. We should always have a backup. We shouldn't just be relying on the primary to do the job. So, but that's a delayed response because it's gonna be coming from another community where this is gonna be a quick deployment. As I always say, we're in the seconds count business. So, as the chief, to reiterate, this is gonna be, easier to manhandle when we have to go into some of these areas that don't have the, like Rock Pond, where you can back right down to the, through the beach and deploy the boat right there.
Yep.
And it can also be used during enforcement if the community elects to go that route, once we examine what's going on our waterways. The good thing is that the combined piece of equipment and utilizing our money appropriately, if we want to deploy the boat for the day, daily, weekly, gives the fire department the training to deploy that boat and then put enforcement officers in the boat so that we can do what we gotta do, as opposed to what we're doing now.
Another question. Are you done, Kip?
Yeah, I'm all set. Nope.
Gary, did you have, I don't know if you put your hand up.
Don't let that go.
Just regarding Harbor Master, do we have any engine size limitations?
No, that will probably be a topic of discussion in your next agenda item, relative to what bylaws exist, what don't, 90B, Mass General Law, Environmental Police, local law, harbor master, law enforcement, but the quick answer is no.
I thought that years ago, I think when Mr. Fabiano was the harbor master, didn't we have something for Pentucket Pond
10,
at
yeah, it is
15 horse?
10.
10 horse?
Ballpate has 10, but that's the Boxford side. So the Ballpate Pond, by definition, the actual body of water is 10 horsepower. And that's an actual bylaw in the town of Boxford. It's actually posted at their location. Georgetown, there's question whether the bylaw exists. I know when the harbor masters have passed, there's a variance of opinion. It's gonna be brought up in your report.
Yeah. Okay, great, thanks.
Whatever is or does not exist needs to be updated, so that if we want to take enforcement action, it can be done properly.
It's excellent ideas. I would also be, what type of response do you get from environmental police?
It's limited. Ask your residents. They've called. When we had the boat go into the water on the Parker River in the winter, there were only 2 officers covering from Worcester to Boston. I
Okay,
had a body that I needed to recover out in the Thurlow Street pits. They could only provide me 1 snowmobile for 1,200 acres. I used Mass State Police and private residents.
okay. So
So,
we don't,
they don't have the manpower to give or provide to the town of Georgetown. They assist any way they can relative to questions. Anytime I have technical issues, they've made visits with me when the Rock Pond Beach Association had some issues down there. They visited and gave us some insight. But as far as providing daily enforcement, weekly enforcement, consistent enforcement, it's just not there.
do you see, with this, any different access points? Or let's say, 2 ponds, other than,
I'd like to
I
say
mean,
3.
you put this boat in down by the, Fish and Game, and you better have a pole to get it out of there.
That ramp should be closed.
So
It's just
do
my
do you,
opinion.
so I guess my question is,
Yeah.
do you see in a public safety event being able to perhaps use American Legion to get something in there? I mean, what are the access points that you see to get this boat into these two bodies of water?
Well, obviously Rock Pond has the public ramp.
Yes.
But for Pentucket Pond, there's a private ramp on Bartlett Drive, and then the ramp that you speak of down by the Fish and Game. I mean, you've attempted, you're a fisherman, you've attempted to launch down there. You're eating lily pads and
Yeah,
chopping up
yeah,
vegetation.
yeah.
That ramp is not conducive to launching a motorboat.
Agreed.
And then, other than that, you know, and Rock Pond Beach Association has a really steep kind of ramp, so to speak, but I don't think that thing's been used. It's gated off for years. Pentucket Pond, we have really no law enforcement access with the exception of what I call the lily pad field there.
Yeah.
And you have to, even to deploy a 10 or 12-foot John boat with a 9 or a 10 horse motor, it takes a while to get that
Yeah,
thing in there
that's what I
because
say,
it's.
you better have a good
yeah,
pole for
yeah,
it.
you know, so I mean, you know, we have some challenges. Public safety first, enforcement second, and that's why the chief and I in partnership are looking at the public safety side, now that things are changing in our response, his response. So yeah,
I guess
a
that's
lot of
my
challenge.
question. I mean, I know you've done your homework here, but for the access points that we have, is this the best, I guess?
That boat right there is the only
Yeah.
option because
Yeah.
you can carry it in. You don't need it, you can back that down on a beach, I could put it in a driveway on Lake Ave and carry it through someone's yard.
These things aren't light, I mean,
Oh, I know, that's why we're only putting a 25 on it.
yeah,
Right.
6 firefighters could carry that boat.
okay,
Easily.
okay.
Easily.
That's, okay,
I lifted the rear end of it today, and I'm an old man. Well,
okay.
I'd call myself an old man, but
And
seasoned,
I understand.
you know what I mean. And I've also, to answer your question further, I'll probably just add, I've worked with Steve concerning access to Pentucket Pond. And like anything, there are some ideal spots where a public ramp could be put in. We've asked residents, some residents have offered their access. It's all,
That would
it's
be
all money.
good, well,
And
I mean,
approval. I know
at least-
Steve would probably be involved in his commission concerning creating access, a public access to Pentucket Pond. There is one there, but
well, maybe
How
not
effective
public,
is
I
it?
mean, perhaps we could work on emergency access.
emergency access.
I mean, you know, like I say, I'm sure you could get this thing off American Legion Beach. If
Oh,
you had to, that's probably
not-
your best shot. But,
Not a problem.
yeah.
But no other boat we have, it would take a while to get it in there.
Yeah.
Especially the iron lung that I have.
And then to the truck to pull it, sounds like a country and western song there. But bigger isn't always better. I mean, for what you talked about for a truck, I mean, I wonder if something more on the size of a Nissan or a smaller Toyota. I mean, Americans don't make them that small anymore. Because when you talk about trying to get something out in the woods and that,
We'd be looking at a single axle, not a dually.
no, that's not what I mean. I mean, I just mean, you know, on some of these old fire roads and that
Yep.
are in town,
Mhm.
you don't get large vehicles through there. You get a smaller four-wheel drive vehicle, and I know it would pull a boat of this type.
Oh, it
because
definitely would, but as I alluded to earlier.
I don't know about the sled that you're talking
Well,
about putting in the back of it.
yeah, I can tell
That's-
you wouldn't put a skid unit.
Okay,
Like,
So you need-
because we're looking, yeah, we
you
we
need
need
the
a
wider
full-size
wheelbase
pickup.
for
Yeah.
that.
Well, it's single
Because
axle
I
will
just, I
definitely.
see down the road, I mean, we're gonna be doing the rail trail, you know, I see ATVs
Yep.
coming down for public safety
And that-
shortly.
and that's-
If that's the type of help you get from the environmental police, I mean, when we all start on this rail trail issue, we're, who knows where that's
I know
gonna
the
bring us.
trails, those type of trails that we had down in Rhode Island, you could put a pickup truck on the trail. And I envision being able to drive that pickup truck down there if someone was hurt. As I said, a skid unit that can put out a small brush fire, to also put an injured person in a Stokes basket and putting them up on the back and strapping them in and then bringing them out to the ambulance, instead of trying to get an ambulance down there and do a 10-point turn to get it back out. Or being out in the Raleigh forest and going out there to have to bring somebody who was injured in. That's kind of how I envision it. So the full-size pickup truck would suit us fine for that, and also be able to tow that with no problem.
Any public safety, I mean, I think is good, but we definitely need to, you have to start somewhere, you know, it's not budget time. So, this, I don't know what Mike's got up his sleeve, but,
Nothing.
I know, nothing, huh?
Doesn't have any sleeves.
Mike's always a great help.
Yes.
I mean,
We'll be by his office
Yeah,
tomorrow
One
morning.
thing I, you know, there's one thing I got on here for later and to ask Mike, and we don't know what the, water increase is gonna be costing the town. I know I'm on Park and Rec, and that's gonna be hefty. So, you know, that's gonna hit all our budgets. But, you know, I do know our assessors, for some reason, do not tax boats, which they could. I don't know why they've chosen to go that way. Not that I need another tax bill, but,
Yeah, that's been brought to my attention before
well,
with funding the Harbor Master Program.
I believe part of it is you have to have a method, if, when they made it that way, if, you have to put some of that back into, you know, you can't just tax it and use it for
Right.
whatever you want. I believe on a boat, you've gotta be able to put it back. Now, I would think public safety, buying a purchase of this sort, would do it, and then maybe other things, but I mean, I think that's one avenue of funding that you probably need to look into, even though I'm the no new tax guy, you know?
All right, gentlemen, thank you. Steve, I know you're in the audience. Anything you want to add? I know you're here for a reason, so you obviously have some kind of thought on this.
Chief, I looked at the access on Kentucky Pond before making improvements to that, so that we can get a larger boat in there. I believe the town doesn't own that access. I believe it's the Rod and Gun Club. So
It's the hoop, sorry.
the Rod and Gun Club owns
Oh,
that,
okay.
and they just allow the public to use it. So everyone thinks it's public land. It's actually, my understanding at least, is it's not. There were some discussions about them donating it or some type of deal worked out where we can improve that. I got my kayak stuck there a few years ago. You're not driving a boat out there on my, yeah, you're not driving a boat through there at low tide. Even with people standing, you're gonna be rescuing the rescuers out of the mud. So I think they're choosing the proper boat for that spot.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, request respectfully that the board act on my declaration of surplus property for my GSA boat tonight so that I can, it's not safe in the water anymore, so I've sidelined it. So, if I may.
Yep.
So it's a motion to.
Yep. Anyone want to make a motion on it?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion
Are you going
to permit Chief Cudmore to make a declaration of surplus
Yeah,
personal
okay.
property and rid himself of a 1997 Parker 17-foot boat in poor condition.
Second.
Okay, motion and second, further discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You got it. All right, two things. Not to prolong this any further, but two things to think about. I really don't want to discuss any further. We got to move on. But number one, is there any advantage to buying this off season as compared to now?
I would defer to the chief on that. He's been working with the dealer.
The quote that I got is gonna be good. I would have to think for at least 60 to 90 days. So, I mean, tomorrow I'm gonna reach out to the vendor and ask him about a demo model, because usually when you buy a demo, it's a little bit cheaper. And also just kinda get a gauge as far as buying it off-season versus in-season, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm just thinking
Yeah.
if somehow, some way we can pull something off, order the town meeting to allocate some money for fall town meeting and maybe buy it off season, try to get some kind of discount
Yeah,
on it.
we'd have to wait till
Have to wait till.
the fall town meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
How's
that's what I'm
the
saying.
trailer under the pocket, too big?
What I'll work on
It's
and
actually too small for
present
the park, isn't it?
with Chief Cudmore
The house
is
sits
put
on the
together a
fenders.
package, what we're looking for and what it's gonna cost.
The,
I'll
the,
present
the
tomorrow.
other question that I have, again, quickly, is Based on the utilization of the pickup truck, is it really feasible to buy something new, or is it? I mean, how often are we going to use this thing, to haul around a boat?
We
Where
could-
we have to spend $50-something thousand on a brand new pickup truck as opposed to, I don't know, 30, 25 on
Yeah, we
something
can look
that
at
can do the
as
job
well.
with 30-40,000 miles on it. We're hauling it around
Yeah.
Georgetown here.
Right.
We're not
Yep.
going state to state here.
I'll look into that as well, absolutely.
Right? I mean, does anybody agree with that? I mean, I don't see why we need a brand new pickup truck, for something along these lines. All right,
Best
so just
deals
a,
for-
Yeah.
Best deals for vehicles are 2 or 3 year old vehicles.
I agree. That's why I ask. I mean, it's something coming
I'll
off
reach out,
lease or something
I'll
like that.
reach out
right?
to the
Thank you very
dealers
much.
and to the vendors on that.
All right. So while you guys are here, the Rock Pond Bylaw Committee, you want to come up just quickly? We can we can chat. We're not going to talk about. We'll do this first, and then kind of come back to that. Chief, we'll come back to the crossing guard. I haven't forgotten about that. Okay. Gentlemen, how are you?
Good, how are you? Yourself?
Good to see you. How's everything?
Good.
Good. If you can introduce yourselves.
Yeah, sure. My name's Dr. Clive Patience. I am the chairman of the Rock Pond Bylaw Committee.
And I'm Bruce Freed, the vice chairman of the Rock Pond Bylaw Committee.
Thanks for attending, gentlemen. So the purpose to invite you to the meeting tonight is we hadn't talked to you, in a year. The committee is one in town, and we just basically wanted to bring you in, especially with the season here, talk about what's going on in the committee, and see if there's anything that we should be concerned about, anything
Excellent.
that you have concerns about, anything like that.
Great. Did you receive a copy of this report?
Yes.
I have.
So you've all got that. So probably what I can do is very briefly on behalf of the committee walk you through the kind of salient points out of the report. This was circulated to the entire committee who agreed with the content. So it represents an aligned opinion of everyone that participates, including Bruce who's here and Zeke who's at the back over there. So in a nutshell, we were formed back at the start of 2018 at your requests, pretty much in response to a very combative situation that was developing on the pond, which related to the boating behaviours, which in extension were then being linked to potential erosion of the bank and therefore conservation concerns and such like. So when we formed the committee, I think the goals were pretty much twofold. One was to get people talking again, to try and diffuse that situation. I think we've been highly successful in getting people talking around the pond to each other. And then secondly, to examine the potential value of putting bylaws in place as they would pertain to 90B, as they would protect the shore. So during that initial meetings, we met and discussed what we thought was important. We saw frequent failure to adhere to 90B happening on the pond. We saw speed of boats being high. We saw size of boats occasionally being high. And by extension, creation of wake, by extension, potential erosion. We discussed at that point, which was January 18, whether we thought bylaws should be put in place. And the agreed upon position from the committee was not to put bylaws in place. We didn't think they were going to be immediately effective. We thought that other means that we discussed as a committee would be more effective than putting them in place, although they could obviously at your request be put in place at any time, really. We reviewed local bylaws of about half a dozen different towns around here, some with harbour masters, some without. The fundamental foundation of those was 90B. So we really already had much of the oversight in place, and that took us to more pragmatic improvements around the pond. February 2018, we got to the point of signage. The signage at the public ramp on Rock Pond was in a poor state of repair. Bruce himself put a lot of effort into getting that with the support of the local government refreshed. So that's been refreshed up to a current, very high quality, reflects 90B and such like.
New signs?
That's all right.
Yep. So nice, nice job there. We see people paying attention to it. It's also got some of the Rock Pond Association flyers on it around the milfoil and such like, which they've been dealing with as well. The main point of discussion was the introduction of a no-wake buoy, which was put in place with the support of the Georgetown police. So there is a no-wake buoy that's been in the pond since that early 2018, kind of spring of 2018 period, and actually was in there in a less anticipated manner the year before. What we hoped was that would be a very visual, very simple reminder of people to respect the cove area, which was where the main energy behind concerns around the potential erosion was coming from Bruce's property, as well as the house next to him, South Esteverde. So that was really kind of a lot of the energy in the early days. We considered drafting a flyer, distributing it around the pond. People didn't think that was necessary in April of 2018. The ramp signage was replaced in May of 2018. The committee agreed that at any point we could meet again, although we decided to defer the next meeting until after the summer period to see how effective that buoy would be. It turned out to be very effective. We didn't, it wasn't perfect by any means. You still get the occasional, digression, whether it be, sort of a regular one, sporadic, or whether it just be someone making a mistake or someone, having an engine problem, that type of stuff. So that got us through pretty much 2018. We monitored life through the winter of 2018. We didn't see any issues there. I was guesstimating on behalf of the committee, which everyone agreed with. It was probably about once or twice a week we would see some boat doing some type of behaviour that raised some shackles. So it wasn't anything utterly egregious most of the time, but there was a few kind of strange behaviours which were probably just frustrations being played out by people. In my humble opinion, living outside of the cove and such like.
But if you could, 1 second. Again, Chief, we don't have anybody on the water, right, at any time?
Once in a while I can put someone out there, but through my personnel changes, when I lost my full-time officer, he was able to split a dual role. I've assigned people out there at times, but I just had the resignation of my second assistant harbor master. He became the deputy fire chief in Ipswich, so he had to leave. So it's just down to one. And he works for a myriad of communities, so I try to use him when I can. But to answer your question, there's not consistent enforcement out there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so we see occasional digressions away from 90B. The vast bulk, I think it's fair to say, of people are behaving well on the pond, and we've seen a significant improvement since the kind of 18 months to 2 years ago, which is part of why we've been spending many evenings over the years together.
I'm sure you guys are ecstatic about that.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to cause too many people too much pain, and after all, it's 90B law, right? So, most recently, June of this year, we convened again. Again, at many of the meetings, we tend to end up discussing the buoy placement, which is being brought up by Bruce and Sal, who are the most concerned, which is fine. Someone has to be most concerned. Others are a little bit more comfortable with where the buoy should be, but it's clearly had a good effect in the cove area. And then we, in June, discussed the water levels pre-winter, spring being incredibly high. Seeing ice damage is very, very likely given the height through the winter of 2018 into 2019. Spring and summer, we had high levels of water. Conclusions that we had much better behaviours for the last 4 or 5 years. And then occasionally the potential for a harbour master was raised again. So we're now at the point where I think that the one area where we don't consistently align, I think it's fair to say, other committee and members, is how much potential do these occasional digressions from 90B, that occasional boat that goes through, how much potential does that really have to cause erosion versus the natural weathering of the hundreds of thousands of waves which are just blowing down the pond 24/7. So it's but no matter which camp you sit in, apart from the science of erosion, it's an opinion, based thing. So that's where we sit at the moment. Yeah.
All right, thank you. One question, Steve, you and I had talked about it, and I, not to put you on the spot, I'm sorry. These gentlemen have brought up the milfoil. What's going on? Can you bring everyone up to speed on that?
So Rock Pond, under control of the Rock Pond Association, is really good about managing it. I think they're doing another treatment this year. I think the pond we were talking about was Fanwort and Pentucket Pond.
Okay.
So two different problems, two different strategies. Rock Pond's actually in really good shape. They
It
did
is, okay.
treatment last year, I think they went on this year. Pentucket's on the radar for next year at best.
Yeah, there was a survey of the pond done by the company supported by the Rock Pond Association just a couple of weeks or so ago, and there was no fanwort found, nor milfoil, which is great.
I'd like to speak, actually. I have something prepared.
All
All right. Although we didn't create a bylaw, the committee was successful in bringing the people together, helping folks to understand the Mass Boating Laws 90B, and generally calming the waters, as well as getting the boat ramp refreshed with updated signage, new lines painted, and new trash barrels. We determined that safety and erosion are the two biggest issues. Safety first. Speed limits to protect children apply here as well as they do in the streets. I know that's an issue close to you, Mr. Twist. Many children, as well as adults, swim these ponds every day in the summer. We need to keep them safe from errant boats, and shouldn't be waiting for an accident before we act. And it's great that the chief is asking for a new boat. Although most people enjoying the ponds behave like adults, there are unfortunately still some folks that don't believe in respecting the other users of the pond or their neighbors or in abiding by the law. A bylaw affected without the ability to enforce it is not much better than the current laws, but would, however, be very effective in outlining the penalties that the GPD could impose upon those that do break the boating laws. A bylaw could be as simple as following the current Mass Chapter 90B laws and adding what the penalties for violations are in Georgetown. This, I believe, would deter and eventually end the problems without penalizing the folks that have boats and are considerable and do abide by the laws. I think we need something like that. When a harbor master puts a boat in that says police on the side, of course people will behave. But the harbor master can't be there all the time. And although we're adults, as I've said, there's sometimes folks blatantly disobeying the Mass 90B boating laws. Having some strategically placed cameras fed into the dispatch at GPD would be much more effective in helping with safety and enforcement of the laws. Cameras would also be a welcome addition for the Conservation Commission to be able to see any blatant violations of the wetlands laws, as well as protecting our open spaces and wildlife. Money for the cameras might possibly be appropriated based on the Mass Preservation and Open Space Laws, Part 1, Title 7, Chapter 44B. I would propose a more suitable boat, as the chief has said, as well as cameras and a bylaw outlining the penalties for breaking the 90B laws. As far as the health of the shoreline of Rock Pond, I'd like to read a quote from the study on the effects of boat wakes on shorelines, done in the Chesapeake Bay. There's many of these out there, but this one really stood out to me. Boat wakes have been shown to have erosive effects on shorelines, scour the bottom of the shore face, and temporarily decrease water clarity. In addition to shoreline erosion, boat wake impacts include vegetative damage and disruption of faunal communities. Boat wake energy is evident, dependent, and is influenced by the vessel length, water depth, channel shape, and boat speed. Wakes are most destructive in shallow and narrow waterways because wake energy does not have the opportunity to dissipate over distance. Although boat wakes are periodic disturbances in comparison to wind waves, they can be a significant source of erosive wave force due to their longer wave period and greater wave height, even when they represent only a small portion of the total wave energy. Our review of the literature demonstrated that even small recreational vehicles within 150 meters, approximately 500 feet of the shoreline, are capable of producing wakes that can cause shoreline erosion and increased turbidity. Vegetated shorelines can effectively attenuate wave in certain settings. However, there's a limit to this capacity, particularly if there's frequent exposure to boat wakes. It is rather the cumulative effect of many boat passages that result in shoreline change, and these effects can be difficult to discern from those of wind waves. To further complicate matters, in narrow channels, boat wakes may reflect off one shore, cross the channel, hit the opposite shore, and return to the original shore for second impact. Thus, in the cove of Rock Pond, this is very evident. There's a developing body of literature that demonstrates the negative impacts of small boats on shoreline stability. I'm not sure if you got my, my attachments today, but I have this Rock Pond memo that I'd like to show. There's some pictures in here of the shoreline damage. The Rock Pond boat ramp was constructed in 1965 to allow for Class B small fishing boats as well as canoes and other small vessels on Rock Pond. With no restrictions on boat or engine size, there is no way to limit the potential damage of powerboats on the pond. Case in point, if you view the cove area of Rock Pond from Google Maps, it's clearly visible that there is heavy erosion since 1965. The property at 7 Lake Ridge Drive has a cement wall that was also constructed on or around 1965, and when viewed in person or from the satellite images, the severe cutback on both sides of the property are visible. That's what you're seeing there. Please see those images. Yes, ice and wind do some damage. We can't control Mother Nature. What we can control is the behavior of boaters in this delicate area of the pond. I invite you all to come look for yourselves at the erosion and undercut, which I believe can be somewhat, if not significantly, attributed to the wake from powerboats. The properties on the north side of the cove and Rock Pond have lost greater than 3 feet of land erosion over the past 30 years for the current and previous owners, and that's being conservative per their estimates. We need to protect wildlife also. There were reports early in the year of someone harassing swans on the pond. There are 3 beautiful blue herons that live here and other wildlife that we need to protect, as well as slowing the erosion by reducing the wake from boats, violating the boating laws. The erosion of the shorelines has gotten dramatically worse over the last few years. On the north side of the cove, we're losing land at a rate of approximately 1 inch per year, and it needs to be addressed. A foot of land being lost every 10 years and 3 feet over the last 30 years is unacceptable and needs to be slowed as much as possible. Gentlemen, I would like you to all stop for a minute and think about the seriousness of these issues. Consider that these ideas and proposals make a lot of sense to enforce safety as well as protect the open space and wildlife and help slow the erosion of the shorelines of our great historic Great Pond. And I would ask the chief and Steve Przymski as harbor master and conservation agent to make any comments on the erosion that they've seen to add to that.
Well, I'll make a comment relative to the activity on the pond. I mean, for people who reside on that pond, I consider it a neighborhood, and there's conflicting use in any neighborhood, especially on a body of water, whether it be kayaks, canoes, a limitation on the size of an engine. The activity overall on the pond, whether it be water skiing, it's a very, very small body of water for anybody who is a boater. I'm a boater and wouldn't want to even put a boat in there. Just, you know, you can go do a circle and you're done. But living there, it must be nice to be able to putt around. But I see some boats in that body of water that are far too large for that body of water. But that's anyone's right to use a boat as long as you can use it efficiently. Mr. Twist is a boater, and you know, if you know how to operate a boat, you can operate a boat safely and effectively at headway speed with very little, if no wake, if you know what you're doing. So if a resident wants to own a large boat on that body of water, then they would be inclined to follow 90B, the 150, and attempt to, you know, reduce the liability of their erosion. I leave all conservation erosion to Steve Przymski. That's not my expertise. And that is the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction with regard to the shorelines and with docks that touch that shoreline. So, you know, that's what I observe. People are allowed to have those size boats on that body of water because we don't have a bylaw like some communities. But that's what Georgetown elects to do, and we have to deal with that. And if I'm required to enforce, then I need the manpower to do it. Just like everything in Georgetown, we have part-time everything. Park and Rec, our fire department, our crossing guard program, our animal control, it's all part-time. So in this day and age, as we've seen in the last year in studies that have been done in government, part-time people are getting more difficult to find. Especially in an affluent community, people don't need to work 2 jobs. They don't need to work a second job like we did in the 80s and 90s in Georgetown. It's difficult to find people and personnel to do that. Who's going to work on July 4th on the pond as a harbor master? Who do I find to do that? I don't have a harbor master that could do that.
All right. Steve, any comments on the erosion?
The erosion is obviously a huge problem out there. I've never seen a really accurate study that says what percentages from ice, call it 50-50 for this discussion. The commission, unlike what a lot of people think, has less control over this than you would think. The analogy was made to me yesterday. It's the equivalent of us having control over cars on the road. Those roads pass through wetlands really close. The oil and the activities from that road are impacting the wetlands. But we're not asked to set the speed limit for cars and some of these other activities. We have very little control over the boat, and that's harbor master stuff. So we would encourage and help and will be partners in any change in any regulations and adopting procedures and policies that benefit reducing the erosion. But I don't think we're the lead on that project. that say for example, we want to reduce it to headway speed. Conservation Commission says there's an erosion problem that's being caused by the boats. That'd be overturned by the DEP in 5 seconds. We just don't have the regulatory authority. Show me somewhere in the regulations or bylaw where we have authority over the pond. We don't. We have shoreline and in. We have nothing in the water. So we'll work with the chief and everyone else, but the docks we have control over. The more permanent ones, temporary ones, are really with the harbor master. So there's a lot of crossover. And again, we work with the chief as best we can as far as solving.
We have no bylaws relative to dock permitting. Residents are kind enough to call the police department, and like I say, as a clearinghouse, we issue letters to let them have a record that they did notify at least a jurisdictional agency that they have a dock in the water. The permit doesn't cost any money to a resident. There's no formal inspection. There's correspondence between the police department and a resident. Not everybody does it, but some people are comfortable doing it. Swim platforms off the shoreline are permitted by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we have folks who do that as well. So just like, very similar to the American Legion Park issue that we dealt with, as far as bylaw, enforcement, and personnel, that's what we're dealing with here. And I just don't like to say Rock Pond. I like to say we have 4 bodies of water that we have access to: Baldpate, Parker River, and our 2 ponds, Nantucket and Rock. If we just do one, and we're doing a disservice to our community. I'd like to look at it holistically.
Do you feel, and this goes for, either Chief or Steve, do we feel like we need some bylaws in place that would help that issue?
From my perspective, yes. I don't know how, I'm not a boater, I'll be honest with you. My kayak doesn't send out a wake. I'm not a boater, so I defer to the chief and a lot of boaters. I think something has to be done. We're gonna be losing inches and feet. Look at Plum Island, houses are rolling into the water. I don't think that's gonna happen here tomorrow. It's not as dramatic, but the concept is real. Erosion out there is a real problem. And to the 4 or 5 houses that are being impacted the most, I think something should be done.
Okay. David?
Joe, I mean, if you've gone out on some of these ponds, they're not very deep. Even in its deepest spot, pales in comparison to some of the rivers I travel down, especially the Merrimack. I mean, nowhere in any of those ponds have I ever seen 60 feet of water.
Cove average is about 12 feet.
I have a bathymetric map here, actually with the 150 feet from shore and 300 feet from the ramp and beach drawn in from the gentleman.
Yeah, so I've covered every inch of that pond with my fishing boat.
Yep.
And it has both down and side scan. The deepest it gets to is 22 feet, and it comes up to typically an average of 10 to 18 feet across the bulk. The cove is one large.
To reiterate what the chief said, I mean, I have a 20-foot boat. I mean, I could drop it in the pond, but I'm gonna idle and literally use maybe 100 yards worth of the pond, because if it's 6 feet deep, I'm pushing an uncomfortable position. If you hit a rock or something like that, it's bye-bye prop. So,
And I think the question to me is with regard to bylaws, and as the enforcement authority in the judicial branch of our government, I look to legislative branch and the executive branch to determine what, if any, bylaws they want to put in place. My personal opinion doesn't vet into this. It's about the community and representing both sides, whether you be boater, passive recreation, and the community's got to determine what they want on those bodies of water. It's easy just to put a regulation in place and say, look, that's it, it's over. But that's not my role in this community as your chief of police and of the 13 other appointed positions in harbor master in that capacity, just so that people have someone to call and we have some type of record-keeping system with no funding, zero.
Although the bylaw committee did not want to create any bylaws, I had written one as an example that I'd like you all to see as a potential bylaw, because I feel that they're needed. I also want you to see an aerial view of my property from about 20 years ago. Where this tree is here is about half the land now. There's 2 pictures there, and look at the shoreline. Also, I have a ton of stuff I brought. I'll leave you the Chesapeake. I can send it all electronically also if you need. And I also did a study on Rock Pond and the other ponds in Massachusetts. I'm just going to read off a few of those really quickly here. Jamaica Pond, 68-acre pond in Boston, 53 feet deep, no motorboats allowed. Stiles Pond, 60-acre pond in Boxford, 26 feet deep, 10 horsepower limit. Walden Pond, 61-acre pond, 102 feet deep, no motorboats allowed. I'll let you all read this stuff.
Thank you. Sir,
Yes, I live across from Bruce.
if you could introduce yourself first.
Hi, my name is Ezekiel Giswaldi, and I live on Heather Road. And I live across from Bruce. And I've only been there 4 years, and I don't see any erosion whatsoever. When we boat, the boating only goes on for maybe, 2 months? Maybe? And that's what's causing all the erosion? I think it's, no, I don't think so. I really don't think so, especially on our end where we have the no wake zone now. The buoy. You know, there's no speeding going on over there. I don't see any of the erosion.
Disregard the paramedic to that buoy and they still speed on by.
That's what you say all the time,
Yeah,
Becky.
but you
I live across from you. I don't see it.
Yeah,
I
guys.
don't see it.
Slow it down. Slow it down.
Let's not digress.
And
Yep.
actually, he has the floor. All right. So continue.
No, that's all I just want
Okay.
to say.
Thank you, ma'am. You have some.
We still have videos this summer of people speeding right past that buoy.
Going full
She
speed.
has to address you, Joe.
Yep. I was gonna say exactly. You gotta address here first and introduce yourself, please.
Rebecca Chain, 13 Lake Ridge Drive. So we have videos this year. We did send them into the chief of boats speeding completely past the buoy. But I do have another question. So, Mr. Twist, recently you were concerned about the speed limit in front of your residence for safety, correct?
In front of yours too. To
And
be honest, the concern was town-wide on
Yes.
side streets.
Yeah, that's
Because
great.
as you know, you have a lot of little kids, and I have friends on your street, so
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of little kids.
And they're swimming all the time. So I do have a question for Chief Cudmore. If that were a cul-de-sac, it wouldn't have the 45 speed limit that it does now. It would be considerably, it's a heavily populated area. And if you looked at that as a cul-de-sac, why would those laws for, protection of swimming and everything be less than a cul-de-sac on a street?
I don't know what correlation you're trying to make. What are you trying to ask?
If it's a circle, so if you had a cul-de-sac, you wouldn't be able to just drive into a cul-de-sac at 45 miles per hour, which is the existing 90B.
Okay.
Right? So, if you look at it as the wider area, the circle as.
Because the Modernization Act that was brought before the town of Georgetown town meeting, the town voted in the affirmative for that change.
Yeah, for cul-de-sacs.
And-
Oh, I'm saying, so if you correlate that to the boats and a car driving, imagine that was a cul-de-sac and you had cars out there. They
Okay.
wouldn't be able to drive 45 miles per hour, it'd be much less than that.
That's
So if you
correct.
look at the boat activity out there,
Mhm.
the existing 90B is 45 miles per hour. It's just too huge for that small
Boats going
area.
45 in a cove.
No, I'm not talking about the cove, I'm talking about.
You are too.
area.
You gotta
So,
address, you
guys,
gotta address the chair.
Over here.
Sorry.
All right.
All right.
Over here.
See, the purpose, Mr. Chairman, of when these issues have been brought to my attention, as opposed to me championing the enforcement of an isolated area on one pond, that was my request to your board, to create a committee, a bylaw committee, and look at the town holistically. And if we look at the notes and we look at the minutes, I wanted to treat that so that if there are issues on our bodies of water, that we can deal with it.
Okay.
And we have conflicting use, there's no doubt about it. I mean, just look at the tenor of the room.
Folks, all statements stay here, okay, and we're gonna keep it down, right? Keep it civil. All right, we're just gonna end it. Clive, ma'am.
Gail Bell, 115 Lakeshore
Oh, yeah.
Drive. So I'd like to ask, has the erosion been reviewed since that no wake buoy has been put out into the cove? Because I believe it's only been out there a few years.
It has been.
So you haven't given it enough time to see whether or not the erosion has decreased,
The erosion. has-
stable.
Folks, here.
So that's one question, and this is kind of a repeat about 10, 15 years ago when Miss Chain here tried to ban the boats on Rock Pond, and we all know how that turned out. So being a resident and a homeowner for 28 years on Rock Pond, we all enjoy the boats out there, the canoeing, the kayaking, everybody gets along, there doesn't seem to be any issues, except for it's always one particular person that seems to have an issue about every 10 years.
Okay.
discussion, like.
Thank you. So obviously, this is a bigger issue than, say, I think we were prepared for. So our time has been allotted for this. I think we're gonna move on. So I appreciate everybody coming. What I might do is, we're gonna, chat as a committee or a board at some point, and we might have you guys back, as there seems to be more feedback that we need, and possibly, some talk about bylaws if we wanna go down that road. We'll have Chief back and so forth and so on. So I appreciate everybody coming, and we will certainly let you know, of the next date that we might have everyone back.
Mr. Chairman, just as an aside.
Yes, sir.
Thanking the harbor master in Ipswich, a friend of mine, he donated that buoy for us. It's a $300 item that I did not have the money for, so.
So thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
And just to confirm, Mr. Chairman, you'd like us to continue in that capacity?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, your committee, you can certainly, move forward, but as far as this board and how we can help, moving forward and based on our determinations, we might have you guys back, talk about, something that we may or may not do. It depends on, how, we feel as a board. We'll talk to, conservation, we'll continue to talk to chief, and if there's something that we feel, we need to do, we will certainly act on it.
Sounds good.
I'd like to make sure you all have this electronically. Can I send it to?
Please send it along to Jen, and she will distribute.
Just to be clear, that was not a component of the
No, it was
bylaw
not.
committee,
That's
that was
me.
purely.
I'd also like to tell you that the bylaw committee was mostly boaters and myself. It was almost all boaters and myself, just so you know.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce, thank you, Clive, appreciate it. Everyone that attended, thank you so much for the time, certainly appreciate it. So. Hey, John, why are you here?
Just as an update for the bike path.
The bike path?
The MOU for the Border of Boston Trail.
How long is that gonna take?
As long as John speaks.
John, how long you got?
As short as you would like it.
You got a minute.
May I preface this, this is in conjunction with the MOU with Boxford. I'm asking the board to re-sign it. It was signed by both boards once before. In order to have the same type of MOU with both towns, Newbury asked for some changes in the legalese, and we wanted to have identical MOUs, so we rewrote the Boxford MOU, so they were identical, except for the dollar amounts. So the Boxford Board of Selectmen re-signed it last month.
Saw that, yep.
And we just need this board to sign it again.
Right.
And John, I thought we tried to get John in our last meeting to update the rail trail. He's the liaison now for the committee with the state, and he's gonna update the board.
John, you're psyched about that, I know.
Yeah, so this was an update that was supposed to be given in June, but I wasn't available then. Just real quickly, the 25% design plans are now complete, and that's for the south leg down to Boxford. So from West Main Street down to Boxford Town Line. Those plans have been formally accepted by the federal government, so it's a federal aid project. What Mike is saying, the Boxford MOU needs to be signed so that we can start paying some bills. There are a couple of invoices that Mass DOT has already okayed, and that took several months to okay those invoices, but those bills are overdue at this point in time. We're getting into the real serious phase of this project, and just real quickly, what we're talking about money-wise, for this for the project going from West Main Street down to the Boxford Town Line, that's $1.8 million. The North Path, that's scheduled at $4.34 million. Now, the tentative schedule for construction of the south part of the bike path, that's now scheduled for FY 21/22. it all depends on the easements being acquired. All of the property owners on both sides of the easement, the former railroad right-of-way, to the middle of that right-of-way, have to be properly notified, and there's a long process involved with it, and there are 80-plus property owners that have to be negotiated. They can either gift, or it'll be a negotiated settlement for easement rights, so that the former railroad right-of-way can actually be used for the recreation path and the bike path, the uses. So it's a formidable task. Katie Klein, who's heading up that task on behalf of the town, she works for Copeland and Page, she anticipates it's going to take a year, and that's just for the south part, a year to acquire those easement rights. So there's a lot of serious work, and it has to be done correctly. It's probably the most important part of the project that needs to be successfully completed, and there's many steps involved with it. And now the plans go from the 25% stage from this point to the 75% stage to the completion. But you know, we're in the time frame now, FY21 through FY24. In FY25 for the south portion of the rec path going through Georgetown, and the north portion actually being constructed. And there's millions of dollars involved. There's just a lot of work that's going to be taking place in the next few years on the project through to fruition. And there's also Route 97 that's going to be totally reconstructed to the Groveland Town line to Moulton Street, and that's an $8 million+ project, and that's scheduled for the FY 25-29 timeframe. Plans are moving along with that too. So the revamping of 97 is going to include a corridor as a recreation path for pedestrian and bike path access. It's a 12-foot wide corridor that would run parallel with Route 97. And again, there are many other paths that are being planned for, border to Boston, actually being implemented. A lot of the projects have been implemented north of here. Just a ton of work going on, millions of dollars at stake. And, you know, every town has to acquire their own rights of way. That's up to the town, and it has to be done right. So we do have a formidable task, and that's all I can say about it. It's just a lot of work. It's a lot of slogging ahead to get those easement rights. So that's about it, unless you want to go any further into it. But the Bike Path Committee's been
Good.
busy.
Oh, I thought your hand was up. Okay, questions from the board? For John?
Basically, the cost, you mentioned someone from K&P is working on it. Who's paying the cost?
Well, those are funds that have been established through the preservation funds. So those monies have been well established.
Yeah, they had the CPC funds.
Right,
that
they're
they retained.
CPC, and they got state money.
I know CPC paid for engineering and that, I mean,
And legal.
and legal. But is this in addition to what we expected? I guess that's more my, you know, lately, this is the first I've heard, and finally, about getting people to sign off. Before, it was always assumed that the right-of-way was there.
Stan Tech, who is the project engineer, John Hendrickson, who's the lead project engineer, he has stated this is the first time in many years of designing railroad right-of-ways for bike paths that they're dealing with private property owners in acquiring the easement rights. It's a unique situation. It dates back to you know, the 1850s, when the railroads were first being planned for. They acquired easements for the use, but they didn't acquire ownership. And then when the railroad—
What do you mean by first time?
What's that?
What do you mean by first time?
Usually these railroad right-of-ways are owned by corporations. In this particular case, when the railroad came to town back in the 1840s and 50s, there was a rider attached to the easements that they acquired, that once the railroad was no longer, that the ownership would revert. So there was a reversion clause, would revert back to the property owners.
It null and voided the easement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is kind of unbeknownst, because what happened, the legislature, when the railroad right-of-way went out of business, the right-of-way, by act of the state legislature signed into law by the governor at the time, transferred the use of the railroad right-of-way to the power companies for electricity. And that's it. So the electric companies have the right to use the former railroad right-of-way, all right, for the power line purposes. But the ownership of the property along the railroad right-of-way, and it's usually right down the center, is the actual property owners that abut the railroad, the former railroad right-of-way.
So I guess by first time, what I'm asking, has Topsfield, Bloxford done this type of thing for what they've done? I mean, they've got sections that are open. Have they done this, what we're doing? That's what I mean by when you say first.
You know, I'm not totally familiar with how, you know, what procedures they used. I know Topsfield pretty much went at this on their own. You know, it's not a paved surface, it's a gravel surface, a soft surface. And, you know, they have it, it's functioning, and, you know, they probably acquired easement rights where they needed to. But
That's it?
No, I don't have.
Oh, I
it.
thought you said, yes, I'm sorry.
I just wanna make sure. This is for a section of Georgetown connecting with Boxford, something that we already signed off on, but it's just been updated and we need to re-sign again.
Correct.
Doesn't have anything to do with the entirety of the project, just
No,
that
just-
particular section.
Correct.
yeah, at a later date, the north section will come in.
All right, great. So if there aren't any other questions, can we hear a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the memorandum of understanding by and between the towns of Georgetown and Boxford, border to Boston Trail, as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion on that? Okay, if not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
All set?
Thank
Thank you.
oh, going in there.
One
Yeah.
late nay.
Do you have that to sign, Mike? You have to sign it? Where is it?
Yeah, I
All right. Moving forward, Scott and Jeff, you want to come on up? Hi, gentlemen, how are you? Thanks for your patience.
Hey, guys.
Problem.
Appreciate it. Try to get you-
Recreation night here at the Board of Selectmen meeting. Staying with that category.
Your summer's going okay?
Very Yeah, good. great. Thanks. Been busy.
Jeff, certainly you. You're not as tan as the chief, so your summer can't be going well with the chief. I don't know.
He has a much better time than I do. That's fact.
He just uses sunscreen.
So anyway, we wanted to have you guys back,
Yep.
just as an update, you know, in terms of, you know, what's going on with the committee, how far you've gotten, maybe give some, updates as to, anything relevant, you know, pertaining to the study, and, you know, certainly answer any questions that we have from the board. So with that, I'll give you the floor.
Sure. You want me to start? Or you want
Yeah,
me- Sure. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jeff Moore. This is Scott McDonald. We're co-chairs of the Recreational Field Study Committee. And as a very brief overview of what this committee was sort of tasked to do, we hired Gale Associates, as you're all aware. You had the proposal that we were brought before you last time. And what we were really looking to do was identify what recreational assets the town had in terms of playing fields, like ball fields, multi-purpose fields for soccer, lacrosse, and so forth. What do we have in town? What condition are those fields in? How are those fields used townwide? Not just for the GAA, but the schools and the Parks and Rec and everything else. Take all that data, pull it together, and take a comprehensive look at how all those assets are being used in town, and then look at the West Street complex, see how it's being used,
and what impact it would have on the overall recreational community if West Street were to be taken offline for any reason, whether it's because of the water department or condition or just the desire to turn it back into a passive recreational facility. And with that being said, we've met several times with Gale Associates. We've met with the GAA in a combined meeting that was, what, earlier this spring, right? And we have feedback that we got from, I don't know how many, actually it was 60 or 80 different questionnaires, I think, something like that, that were sent out with
every sport within GAA, as well as Park and Rec and the school department as well.
Yeah. And all that data was brought back in, and we just received our draft of Gail's study Friday, literally. And it was a nice weekend, so I didn't have the chance to go through the whole thing. But anyway, we're going to be meeting as a committee this Thursday, and with the task of discussing what we have before us, and our intent is to distribute it back to you guys. We wanted to give our committee one pass through to see if there's any sort of glaring errors or what have you that we can correct if need be. And they are about 75 to 80% complete, roughly, with what we have here. And this is a summary, as I said, of the background, the assets that we have, how they're being used, what impact West Street, or how West Street contributes to that use, and what would happen if it were taken offline. And then looking at, and the aspect that I didn't touch on yet, was where else in the town might we be able to expand or develop new recreational fields to make up for a loss of West Street, or to make up for whatever deficit we may see as a result of all this data that's been compiled. So, spoiler alert, is really two places that we've kind of focused on. There were three, and when we came before you guys last time, we took the National Ave parcel out of that mix. We looked briefly at Pembroke. Pembroke School might have an opportunity for a little bit of expansion, but not much. There's really two locations in town that we're focusing on, and that Gail's focusing on. That's the upper field of the high school, where there is capacity to expand for sure, and they're started to put together some schematics of what that might look like, various options that our committee, and if anyone else is interested in meeting with us Thursday and having input, we'd be happy to have you. And we're going to
Where's that meeting, Jeff? I'm sorry.
It's here, second floor, I believe. It's going to be 7 o'clock on Thursday. It might get pushed to 7:30. Harry has a commitment. We would like to try to wait for Harry.
Okay.
The members of our committee, by the way, are Scott and I, David Surface, Harry Lockatiglia, and Peter Burns. I'd also like to put a shout out to Peter Durkee and Rich Williams, who have both spent a lot of volunteer time working with us as well. Very knowledgeable on all things Georgetown and recreation, and they've been a big help. So with that in mind, I also asked John to stick around for a couple of minutes, because I know the Economic Development Committee has also been doing a study for potential septic locations in town, and I understand that one of the target locations would be the upper field at the high school, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me if I'm wrong, John. And so the good news is Gale has kind of done some schematics, but they haven't gone to the last 25 to 20% of what they need to do, which is looking at the cost of these things. So we're going to say, all right, we'd like you to look at a couple of options here, and what would the cost comparison be? And then we can say, okay, given the potential of these locations and then what the cost may be, sort of make a recommendation as a committee for a master plan for recreational field use with this full report, and the conclusion being, this is probably the best solution. There's a couple options here to consider, and we kind of want to point to here. With the upper high school situation, my understanding was a sort of similar study was being done, or maybe is complete, looking at a centralized septic system for the immediate downtown area. Is that right?
Well, it's not really a septic system, right? It's
water treatment, wastewater treatment.
Water treatment.
It's a treatment facility.
Treatment.
Leaching field, right.
But, what has been described to the Economic Development Committee by the engineer who performed the study is that you could have dual use. So right now, they presented this to the school committee at the end of June 27th, and we did get unanimous support to actually look at the feasibility of the upper field, relative to see if it has the type of capacity necessary. It's a drip leaching system that's associated with this proposed wastewater treatment. So you have a treatment facility, and the filtered very much filtered leachate that leaves that facility, the treated leachate. It goes into a drip system, and it's a 5-acre site that's necessary for the size that we're looking at.
So that would get
implementing.
pumped uphill
Yeah.
to those fields.
Yeah, and you could have all this activity going on with the leachate, very treated leachate material. It's not anything that needs that much more filtering in order to be ecologically sound to enter the environment. But on top of the system, the field, you could utilize the surface for recreational activities. And that was described to us by the engineer, and that's what I presented to the school committee. So not to interfere, and that would be the ultimate goal of all this, is not to interfere with that field becoming a dual-use field. An important economic development component relative to introducing wastewater treatment capacity for the downtown area, roughly 85 properties. So introducing leachate, subterranean, and utilizing the surface, and you could utilize, you could envision, track purposes, soccer fields, baseball fields. Right. What it turns out to be is a very expensive piece of property to transform into a leaching system and a use on the surface. But that's what goes with the territory of trying to introduce a leaching capacity for 85 properties at one location.
But there's potential maybe for some economies
Hey,
of
you do it at
scale
the
and
same-
some
if
two-for-one
you do it
type
at
of
the same
situation.
time, and,
Right.
And what I'd also like to throw out there is, so Senator Tarr and Representative Mira were in front of us, I don't know, 9 months ago. And, the state has allotted, put aside a lot of money, correct me if I'm wrong for anybody on the board, who's there, but, for economic development. And my argument is this might be a perfect utilization of funds, because we're doing that to, try to thwart, really, some activity downtown, i.e. economic development. So, that could technically be construed as money that we can even bring into this kind of project and kind of do everything all at once. And I think that's a perfect storm, right there.
The school committee was excited because the economic aspect, you increase the value of the downtown area, which increases tax revenue that's dispersed evenly. That's all.
Increase the school budget is what they're thinking, right? Yeah.
Whoever screams loudest gets the most, something.
And there's also the potential, and what Gail will say is, in order to add more fields, you expand up there as well, right? So there's some unutilized real estate at the top of that hill. There's some knolls that people are aware of, and there's some property in the back, and they've got one schematic, that we'll pass along to everybody that shows, what can happen if you kind of clear some of that out. That may be of benefit, give you maybe more leaching area. I don't know if they were constrained up there with the size, but but if they were only looking at the fields, there may be more. I don't know, but we would like to sort of hold off the budget part of this.
Oh, yeah.
For a little bit until we have
understand what's going
maybe
on.
the opportunity to kind of look at, what the results that the Economic Development Committee got, and kind of see if we can overlay that a little bit, and have maybe at least 2 sets of results for the high school if that's what's needed. And John, who's working with us from Gale, can kind of say, hey, this would work, or and this is what it might
I
cost.
just want to really emphasize, there's no competing interests involved with this. It's all
Absolutely.
cooperative interests, and I think if it all happens for this wastewater capacity and be introduced downtown in the immediate surrounding area, it may not be just one field. There may be 3 different locations that can be utilized for dispersal.
Sure.
But
what Jeff's saying is there's more than meets the eye up there right now.
Yeah.
So if it would be beneficial to have more leaching capacity,
They ought
there's
to be at least be
potential up
aware
there.
of it, kind of thing.
But,
so.
it might be a unified
Right.
situation.
Oh, it would
and
have
that's
to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, we would have brought, I'm part of economics, so I was going to say we would have brought this to your attention, but, it's really within the last, say, 4 months that,
Yeah.
The
I mean,
we
we're aware
we
of what's
have
going
our
on.
ways.
I asked him to stick around because I knew.
Then the other reality is, through the findings this is realistically the only feasible location to put it all together for the downtown area to actually have the sewer.
Sure.
It's the only place. The only other location was way up in the woods on the other side of the wetlands behind the public safety building, and it's just totally infeasible to even envision that. So this is, unfortunately, we have one spot, and I think, if we all work cooperatively together and we find all the necessary funding to implement it, put all the pieces together, this may all happen.
Right. Pretty
Right.
exciting.
There's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts about it.
Yeah.
So Jeff, proceed.
Well, that's really kind of where we are.
Okay.
I know it's been a long night, you need to move on. I will say that we are also looking at the Greenway parcel, which you guys are pretty familiar with. That's the large parcels out off of Martell Way. That was this second, and sort of the third was Pembroke. And we won't get into that, you'll see that in the final report too. There's some potential there, but not a lot, not enough to make up for what we're gonna lose. But the Greenway parcel certainly has capacity to install fields. The issues there, again, we would like to get some cost on that, but what's not gonna be included in that, the two big issues there was, one is a parcel that is not owned by the town that would require, acquisition by the town somehow at a cost of, we don't know, and a very large wetland crossing. They're calling it a bridge. So there's a pretty substantial wetland crossing that would be involved to utilize that. Doesn't throw it out of the realm of possibility, but it's something that we would have to consider. So we'll look at the construction costs, assuming that we can get at that off of Martell Way, get across the wetlands, own the property that we don't already own, and that would have to be kind of tacked on as as we weigh the pluses and minuses of these things. So I'm getting ahead of ourselves. We'll give you a full report when we're done. And when we do meet, we do have a final report. We're certainly going to give you the draft after we've got a chance to take a look at it. It'll also go to the GAA constituents for any of them that may be out there watching. The intent is to have Gail come back at a future meeting when we're done and provide a full presentation to this board. And we'd ask, at that time, maybe we can allocate a half hour, so if your time, if that would be all right, and have them give a full-blown sort of presentation to the town, so to speak, on what they came up with.
Okay.
If that would work for you guys.
Sure. Did you have a question? No? So just to understand, so you guys are meeting this upcoming Thursday?
Thursday, second floor.
Okay, so, yeah, we're meeting once a month right now, so maybe it'll give you certainly some time, to digest what the report has. Certainly no hurry to come back in 1 or 2 weeks. Jay, when's our next meeting?
August 12th.
August 12th? You guys think you might be ready to come back and?
For a final?
Well, just to kind of give us some feedback as to what you're seeing.
Gonna be out, maybe, certainly by September, anyway.
I was gonna say, if August 12th
August
is not feasible,
around.
then, we could do September.
Certainly early fall, yeah, call it September.
And the reality is, not to say that we're gonna go into stall mode, but we do wanna understand more about what's going on with this wastewater treatment plant and how that can play into what we're doing, so. And as all the board knows, this isn't something that's gonna happen anytime in the very near future anyway, as far as athletic fields. So I think sometimes, moving a little smarter and understanding what their other options are makes more sense.
Well, any information, John's available to give it to you,
Yeah, we have a little bit of budget left, and we'd like to use it wisely, because if the reality is that there's some things that people think might really happen, we'd like to grab that information and have them utilize the budget we have left to look at it from their perspective and kind of incorporate it, so.
Sure, because there is a certain point that I am planning on approaching, both our senator and representative about the possibility of getting involved, and I'm sure there's some process to put in for some money, because he also made very clear that money was available as long as it's available. So it's not going to be there in perpetuity. It's there until, I'm sure there are other towns that are chomping at the bit, for those, business opportunities to utilize those funds to better their own towns.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, it's not an endless, amount of money that's always going to be there. So, as much as I say, all right, this is not, something on the immediate horizon, I'm hoping that it's on the horizon sometime in you know, it's, I don't know what you call it, not near future, but, you know, somewhat near
Sure.
future.
Mhm.
Now we might be able to pull something together and make a presentation to them in the state to see if it is something that would fall under that umbrella.
Yeah.
Because it'd be a shame for a town that's, you know, starving for some business development if that money's there and we didn't find a way to at least apply for some of it.
Right, yeah.
And I think this is our real opportunity with at least the.
Yeah, we were excited when we saw that as a potential because, you know, the dual use there is a very, very real thing. And I had a conversation with the guys from Gale Associates about that last Friday. And they said, yeah, that's not uncommon at all for those types of, you know, uses to coexist. And so, the only other thing I want to bring up before we leave, there are some invoices that we plan to approve. They do have to go through this board, so we're going to recommend payment on Thursday, and then that will be before you in your next warrant, whenever you meet next. So,
okay.
Like I said, they're about 75-80% complete. So you'll see of the 25,000 that was allocated, you'll see us recommending payment of, I don't know exactly what the amount is, but.
Okay.
75% of that.
Anybody have any questions for Jeff Scott?
Nope. Okay, just one quick question. So the lot you're talking about at the end of Martel Way, is it directly back? So you go to where the dead end and it's across the wetlands?
All the way to the end, all the way to the end, and to the right of the circle.
Yep.
Across from, there's a little factory that used to build boats in there, but
Yeah.
past the dye factory and then to the left.
Okay.
The town owns that parcel.
Oh, really?
Acquired it a number of years ago. It is parcel 11F. And the town owns parcel 12 as well.
Okay.
And you can go ahead and give that to Mike and print another one. Sorry, I don't have copies.
No, that's fine.
We're gonna distribute electronically, you guys see it.
Oh, that's fine. I was just looking at the map. That's fine. Thank you.
Yep. And they note on there's a couple of parcels that the town does not own. So,
All right.
all right.
Gentlemen, thank
All
you
right,
so
thanks
much.
for having us.
Thank you for the
Yep.
patience.
Thanks,
Really
guys.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
John, thanks for
Thanks,
staying.
John.
Appreciate it. Yes, I'll be there.
7:30?
Yeah, don't remind me. Gentlemen, you're up again. Thank you. Thank you for your. You have. Well, let's start with the crossing guards because I know that was on the back end of your earlier discussion. And then I think you have 51 West Main.
Yeah. Seems the common theme in Georgetown is recreation from afar, huh? That's all we seem to talk about. But crossing guard update. I met briefly with the superintendent at the close of the school year. I have the opposite problem with the crossing guard program. Again, it's another part-time program that we manage. It's funded for FY20, but I don't have any people. I had 2 long-time retirements leave, and another crossing guard just left prior to the end of the year, so I'm down to 1. I'm supposed to have 3, and I have a volunteer. George Kaminsky volunteers his time when I have sick calls, and then obviously we try to fill with duty staff as we can. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, Georgetown had 8 crossing guard posts. We've been reduced through funding and through personnel. We've had 3, at least 1 in front of every school. It's a problem. Retention's a problem. Mike raised the hourly wage. We were making about $11 and change an hour. He put it up to 15 as a minimum wage situation as the personnel director. It attracted that new candidate, but she left prior to the end of the year. So I'm going to meet with the superintendent to see what we can do. I did a survey of the 11 districts in the area. There's only 2 that utilize the police department for crossing guards and working under the auspice of the police department. North Andover and Georgetown, the rest are all through the school department. We're going to have to brainstorm and deal with this problem before the opening of school. I did contact a private entity to try to privatize, as some communities have. They provide crossing guard services for a fee. Our program is very small in comparison to what they were looking for. I asked for a quote. They said they would get me one, and then when they looked at what I was looking for, I wanted the bare minimum. They said thanks, but no thanks. So I wanted to bring that to the attention of the board. I may have to ask this board and the school committee to put their heads together and determine how we can handle this. It's not a funding issue, it's a people issue, just like our other situations with our part-time employees. So It's an hour in the day, in the morning, an hour in the afternoon. You know, we used to attract retirees for that position. The bad weather and inclement weather gets the best of those folks too, but we've been able to make it work up to this point. But I see collapse on the horizon. You know, I have one crossing guard coming into the new school year, aggressively advertising, trying to get it out there. Some people show some interest, but I mean, it's a commitment for 2 hours a day.
Yeah. Random question. I mean, that organization, when you said you submitted, you know, the bare minimum or basic, what else is there? It's a crossing guard. You know, what?
Well,
why
I
not
think
ask them to pave the road.
No. I think it's from a financial perspective, from their business plan and model. It
What
would
else
have been
do they
cost
want?
prohibitive. Well, I mean, you know, they want 10 or 15 employees to come in, and they want to charge
So they
the.
want like a city.
Yeah, you know, and our district doesn't need that.
I thought
The
there
minimum
was, like, other
is 3, so we have
services.
one per school. You know, the good news is, you know, I'm trying to utilize traffic safety grants for crosswalk and pedestrian activity. Dave Schofield, the light manager, has donated a new electronic crosswalk sign, and I'm proposing to put it in front of the post office, similar to down in Pentucket Ave. I'm sorry, Pembroke Ave and East Main Street, and the building supply crosswalk. It's been very effective. We monitor that. We've monitored it with cameras, and that actually works. So my proposal is in the next 2 years to go around the entire 4 quadrants of our community, including getting down to some of the tributary roads like Pentucket Ave and West Main for the beach and things like that. So put one there. That's the narrowest roadway, but it is going to be reconstructed, as you heard, in the coming years, 97. So that will improve down there. That sign's hit all the time. The roadway is extremely narrow there. So we put a plastic person out there to try to slow the traffic down, and we have to replace it about once a month.
Chief, you mentioned that you usually have retirees. Have you posted this?
It's been posted everywhere, social media. We've tried, and I'm not getting any bites. So what I've attempted to do with the superintendent is possibly try to pull from that school population if people are already working there, maybe devise some plan. Currently, right now, we have, don't have my glasses on, 19,050 appropriated from town meeting for the crossing guard, so we got $19,000 for that program with the new wage. We were $14,000 last year.
So the person that you do have, is that the person who generally works the high school?
He's a rover right now. When we had the last retirement, when Joe Bouchard left, I had Larry Mintz going back and forth school to school to try to hit the busy time.
Well, I guess that was my point. I mean, the high
Yeah.
school goes early,
Mhm.
and then when they're in, pay him more,
Mhm.
if he's interested, of course. I mean,
Well,
he
he's-
can go
he's-
from there to
he-
the other school.
He goes to
and-
Pembroke.
He did that all last year. I was down to only 2 crossing guards for the entire school year. So he was my rover.
Okay.
And then the Pearly school was a constant. Then I was able to rehire Pearly. Unfortunately, she left in May before school ended for other commitments. So,
So would he be interested in doing the same this year?
right. But I only have
know,
one.
but
Yeah.
That leaves you one that you have to get rather than
Right,
2.
right.
So I mean, it does help, and then you can just
It
get
helps.
double.
You know, I'm trying to get a sustainable model, so
Yeah.
maybe I
No,
keep this thing
know.
alive. It's only the kids. You know.
But I mean, here we are in July, so
I know.
I mean, you know,
Well, you know, we've
the best of it.
yeah, you were 2 weeks in July. We addressed it at the end of the year with our annual safety meeting. So I just need that this board is aware that I'm out recruiting and possibly looking at maybe slicing this pie differently. I don't know, but I'm at the end of my rope with that situation.
Okay.
And it's 19,380 with the specs on. I can see it now. That's what's been appropriated for the crossing guard FY20 for. And by the way, that is a separate line item. We were able to create back when crossing was an issue. That's separate and distinct from the police salary line item as well as communications. It sits unto itself. So that's what that line item's been earmarked for.
Okay.
51 West Main Street, as John does with all special permit applications through the planning board. I do, and as does the chief, the fire chief, we're asked to provide comments concerning special permit applications that go before the planning board. There was one currently sitting I believe, for a public hearing at 51 West Main Street, which is the Sedler Building. And very few concerns during the course of these permits come through the police department where we're concerned about anything that would happen with the creation of housing or any type of change in permitting. But this 51 and 55 West Main Street, there was a proposed driveway. I don't know where the project's at, but there was a one-way only driveway that was proposed to the east of 55 West Main Street. There's a curb cut there because I guess this driveway existed during urban systems on the plan. And given the narrowness and the fact that the parking as it sits today downtown, we would have to eliminate parking spaces if they wanted that driveway there, because I went down and we took photographs at night and I visited the site myself, and it would just be near impossible to have a residential egress there onto West Main Street without some type of parking reconfiguration on that westbound side. Parking spaces are a premium, we know that, so that's not the purview of the planning board, it's this board, so it was my duty to bring it to your attention. I don't know if that driveway is still in existence on the plan. You probably could have asked John. I don't know where they are with their public hearing or how that works, but
What is that proposed house that they wanna build there, or what?
Sedlers is gonna put a condo
That's the
complex.
Sedlers, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so behind the existing Sedlers building will be another building.
Yeah.
And there'll be proposed retail entry egress east, and then on the west side of that property, they're saying exit only for the condos that will sit out back there.
Okay.
And in the current parking configuration, I think you have the photos, it would be near impossible to get vehicles in, out of there. They would not be going in reasonably during rush hour and specifically during nighttime when our downtown businesses are flourishing. So I just wanted this board to know that that should be part of the discussion on the approval of that planning board permit application. I don't know where that project is with regard to approval. We're asked to provide, you know, this type of recommendations,
Yeah, I
but
think there's a continuance.
it would have to be researched.
You know, that is, if I might, that's, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. That whole section of West Main Street where the parking is on the side westbound,
Mhm.
coming out of the Eagle Building is, you take your life in your hands, because you gotta protect, if there's people parked there, you can't see.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's only one space that's west of the Eagle Building exit egress before you get to Sedlers. After that, there's a white fog line that people do park beyond 55 all the way to Richdale.
Right.
It's not regulated that you cannot park there, and there is space to park there, but that white fog line delineates no travel lane, and it's not marked as parking spaces, but it's not improper to park there. So people are parking there, so if they can create this driveway, that's gonna be a bit of an issue for traffic on West Main Street. At least upon initial review.
Well, for the safety of those using it as an egress.
Correct. And it's an exit only on the plan that I was
Yeah,
privy to.
I was in the zoning board when we suggested, because of the amount of traffic that's already going by, we didn't want, and there's only enough for one car, so we didn't want it to be both ways where you had somebody coming down and then pulling in and had to back up. So it made sense that if the pattern came in and you went into Settlers and around, you exited one way.
And it's
instead
very
of-
narrow. The curb cut that's there between 55 and 51, Sedlers and that large yellow house. I think it measures like 14 feet. It's very, very narrow, so there's really not much room to work with that. So it was just my duty to bring it to your
I don't know
attention.
where that is, because I know the abutter had some concerns about
Mhm.
using that.
There was supposed to be a wall and a fence constructed
Yeah.
for privacy or whatever, so. But that's what that memo was about, and we'll see where the planning permit
Do
application.
we have to act on this at all, or?
No, I think it was more of an advisory
Just
because
advisory?
I don't know from the planning board perspective, if that recommendation is made, it would be this board as the executive branch to
So-
deal with that.
Go ahead, Gary.
You say there's really no parking, but it's no delineated parking.
Correct.
So what our job would possibly be would to be say that we're to post it as no parking each side, so that there's basically some visibility.
If
It'll
this-
give
if this driveway
better
comes to fruition,
visibility when
correct.
you're coming out.
Right.
So basically, our job is to say, no parking for so many feet. Any recommendation, with like 2 spots, 1 spot each side?
Well, what I would do is, depending on what the final project is, if that driveway actually does come to fruition, that would determine what we do for that
Yeah.
area. Because these are all preliminary plans. I've seen these plans change so many times when we do subdivisions and we
Yeah.
do
Right.
condo complexes. It's up in the air, but I just responded to that memo, and
Okay.
as the authority, I just wanted you to know.
And you know, I'm looking at Chief here. I mean, would you even be able to get any equipment
Not in that,
in an
so I'm
emergency?
talking about as the U, and anytime I present, a document to the planning board, from the fire department, it's always emergency access.
Yeah.
I mean, if that driveway's not there, and we need to ladder that side of the building, we're just gonna put ground ladders up. You know, as long as I can get my first due engine in to the parking lot if I need to, because the ladder truck jack spans, fully extended, are 19 feet. Well, the roadway's 20. It's a roadblock. Once plus it's a 109-foot aerial, which is more, not so much for the height, it's for the reach. So my ladder's gonna set up, God forbid if that building catches fire, my ladder's gonna be sitting on West Main Street,
Oh,
on
West
Middle
Main
Street,
Street,
right,
fitting with that.
exactly, but the first due engine may need to get in, and the other concern would be going down in the back if we ever had a fire in those proposed condos. But as long as I've got enough space to operate, the trucks can be backed out, it's kinda like a, you know, egress in. You know, and I'm sure it's gonna be according to what the plans that I've seen, there should be enough room to turn the ambulance around if we had a medical emergency in those condos, so. I mean, from my standpoint is, you know, I drive through there a lot, and you can clearly see the concern of somebody trying to pull out and get broadsided because of these blind spots by the traffic parked alongside the road.
And we just know parking spaces are a premium downtown, so until the plan is finalized, I just wanted to make sure that we're cognizant of that. The exit and entry where the retail and the residential will still be similar to what Sedler's looks like right now. Just that one driveway is what caught my attention.
Yeah, if I remember correctly on the plans, the egress into Sedler's for the proposed property is going to be on the parking lot side, on the Eagle Building side. I don't believe there's going to be any egress on that proposed U driveway. I think it's just more of an exit, so that stop the congestion coming both ways.
Have you made any recommendations?
Just being able to get in there, that's my biggest concern. Anytime I've ever replied to John's request for comment, it's always been emergency access getting into. It's the fire code, we really can't regulate driveways, but we can regulate roadways. 20, and the standard is 20 feet curb to curb. So that's why in some of these developments, 2 or 3 houses you're seeing, is I always tell them it's 20 feet to get into that development.
Well, again, I mean, we have to do what we need to do.
No,
Safety
absolutely.
first.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
It would be, you know, biggest tragedy ever if you guys were needed and you
And we
can't
could
get
get
into
in,
the place.
and that's always been a concern of mine, and, you know, that's why we always, you know, we let them know what the code says, and we don't deviate from it. It's just very gray in the code when it comes to driveways.
Okay. Anybody else?
So has this been presented to the planning board?
I sent it to everybody, zoning, planning, Board of Selectmen, and the planner.
Interesting.
Thank you very much.
Is that a premium? You know what
Thanks,
happens?
Chief.
You
Nice
start-
to meet you, Chief.
Anytime.
Thanks, Chief.
Chief, nice to you.
You don't look too bad either, Mr. Chairman.
I'm like this all year, though.
I was gonna say, you said that in January.
I get to have a couple days of sun and I can actually look healthy, right?
Keep the hat on next time.
You're making me blush.
Have a good night, gentlemen.
Take
Good
care.
night. Good night.
All right, so we're gonna go to the discussion about the water department merger. I put this on the agenda based on our last visit. You know, we had a visit, you know, by one of the commissioners, And, you know, we had concerns over the rate increase. It seemed like it was very reactive to, you know, how the town voted. But it was also something that I think was very surprising, you know, for a lot of residents. I know I was surprised when I heard, you know, the level of increase. So we also heard that, you know, there's a possibility that, you know, if it goes back onto the fall town meeting, maybe take another crack at it now that people know what the increase is. I'm under the impression that I never heard of these increases when the town voted. Could the vote have been different if people knew that these types of increases were coming? I think that would have definitely affected some of the people in their voting. So I simply wanted a discussion on the board as far as, do we want to put this back on a fall town meeting warrant to give it another crack based on feedback that I have seen on social media, people I've spoken with, internally, so forth and so on. If it's a no, it's a no. It's fine. I at least wanted to throw it out there as a discussion because I think we would really be doing the citizens of the town a disservice if we didn't at least approach it, talk about it, and see if it's something viable. So, Doug, go ahead.
Couple of things.
Yeah.
One is, I don't think, they never did mention the percentage of increases coming. They did say that part of the savings from the merger would lessen the impact of rate increases. I think probably we were looking at a 15 or so % rate increase anyhow.
You were, correct.
No matter what, right. So the other is because of the increased expenses that they now have to get a manager and I don't know when, how long they have, probably into next year before they need to find new space to do that. So I think that 25 covers that other 10%. It is, you know, nobody likes their rates to go up.
Well, it's actually more than that because it's a total of 50%. Right?
It's a total compounded 56%.
56%, right?
But anyhow, regardless of that,
Getting a compounding, I like it.
The water commissioners and the electric light commissioners haven't come to any decision at all. They don't know what they want to do. They don't know whether they want to try to go do the merger again or just stay split. They're looking at some plans, maybe if they remodel the electric building, maybe somehow the water department can get up in there. I don't know that we should be making any decisions about whether or not we'd like to see something on the warrant before they've made a decision.
Good point, but to that point, I'd like to address it that, you know, speaking with Nick Lawler, who is chair of the commission, he's all for it. And, you know, I asked him to be here this evening. He's on vacation with his family. But he did say that he's absolutely for it if we decided that we wanted to move forward with that, and he would have the support of the electric department as they are still interested in doing it.
If I may.
David.
Doug, I agree with you. Here's the real crux of the issue here. They've been trying to find someone to run that department for what seems like a dog's age. And the fact of the matter is, there's other towns out there having the same exact problem at the same level. These people are few and far between and want very high salaries when they get these jobs because they know they're coveted and they're valuable. So the way the second problem was, it was not really delivered that well at town meeting. This conversation should have been, look, the one manager, if you will, the Dave Schofield, okay, is going to manage personnel. He manages personnel now. He's capable of managing personnel. We're not asking him to analyze and chemically factor water and all this other stuff. We'll have an engineer do that at a lesser rate. And that was factored into the savings, but it was not explained well. And in my opinion, one person was easily able to, sway the vote. I don't have a problem putting it back on the warrant because I too am seeing the social media, you know, influx of comments about the rates and quality, and people want good water. Great, I want good water. We all want good water, but you can't present something like this 50%. You have to do it its justice, and you have to give people facts and explain it. And I have a feeling if Nick was there, he would have been able to answer this because he's done it already in Littleton, and we wouldn't be at this situation. But the fact of the matter is, he had other commitments that, you know, whatever. That said, people are concerned about these rates. 56% is a lot of money. There's no doubt about it. We need to consider that if we put it on the warrant, then I feel like we have a responsibility to make sure that they come prepared because, you know, we want people to come out to town meeting. We want them to get involved in these votes. I found it astonishing only 130-something people were there.
That was a big crowd.
Yeah. Right. Again, I was disappointed that there was 130-something people there. And for issues and stuff on this warrant that was pretty important. And we need to make sure that if they come, they're prepared. And that they present the information to people so that they understand it and that they can make an informed decision. That I think was the problem. People couldn't make an informed decision and then found out after the fact it was going to cost them 56%.
Right. And all I was getting at is that I don't want to have hearsay, oh, they said they want to do this, they're all in favor of it. I want them before the board saying, we have decided we want to go forward with this at fall town meeting or the spring town meeting, if that's what they want to do. But until they do that, we could all sit here and say, we wouldn't mind putting it on the warrant. But until they might say, no, we decided we're not going to do it.
Well, like I said, I've gotten the buy-in, and by the way, it does have to be fall. It has to be someone immediately, or they're going to move definitely in that other direction, without any concern for looking back. So it's either this fall town meeting while it's fresh in everyone's head, based on the vote, whatever, or they are definitely moving on.
That's not to say what you've been told is inaccurate. I'm just saying they need to be there, telling this board that that's what they want to do.
I mean, I can certainly invite them again, but that's if that's what the board would want to see, that's fine. Like I said, I'm okay with my conversation with Nick, who's chair. But again, it's to the pleasure of the board, what you would want to see if we were going to vote on that. So, Kip,
Yeah, no, I agree with all of you. I trust Nick's opinion as well. I think I'm fine with that too. As far as them coming back to town meeting, though, I really think that it's not just them being there and presenting their case and telling a story of what they want to do. They basically have to get people to make a decision on this well before town meeting. They just didn't execute it very well the first time, and they're the first ones to admit that. You can't show up there that night and try to explain this to everyone because the conversation will go on for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. I think they really just need to concentrate on an edification process so people understand the issue, understand where the savings come from, publicize those financials beforehand, really show people why they're trying to do it and what the tangible results are going to look like. Before they came to town meeting, they presented some stuff, but people didn't have anything in hand. Not really, that they could read and really understand. They had different materials that they showed us. I just really think that they need to spend the time to really educate the town a little better than they did before. I know they tried and had some sessions.
I was going to say that. I mean, how do you do that if people just don't
I think
show
you
up?
have to present more, distribute materials, whether it's on our website, so people can see them and download them, or be able to see them. Not everyone's going to be able to make a meeting. People will go on a computer and read stuff.
People check their kids' backpacks, Joe. I mean, or they get stuff brought home from kids and they look at it. I mean, at least their eyes glance over it. So
then you're only reaching Pembroke, though.
No, but true. Well, maybe the high school kids take it home too, and maybe they're giving it to. I mean, they tried to get out there. They presented here. They did some stuff. but I agree with you. They need to have this thing prepared, ready to go, and people have to be in the know. Like, they have to be able to make an informed decision. Look, if you go buy a car, you don't say, I'm just going to buy a Toyota, right? You go and you research the car, what options you have, what it does for you, what, you know, gas miles, all this stuff. You make an informed decision. Same thing with this. People in the crowd were swayed to the other choice because doubt was cast. It was like a jury in a courtroom.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
you know, had they been there and been able to say, look, here's the facts. This has been done, this has been done, this has been done before. This is how this works. Here's what your rate increase would be. Estimated, say, 15%, because that's the number I heard too. If we don't do this, you're looking at 56% over the next 2 years. Because you want clean water, and we all want clean water, and we have to get clean water. So we need to get there one way or another.
Well, the other thing to take into consideration, the current water infrastructure is really built in the 20s and 30s. So we have a near 100-year-old infrastructure. We just happen to be the people living in the time of its deterioration. Then it needs replacement. You know, so we have to take that into consideration too.
You're the only one. You have any comments?
It sounds like you ask, I mean, I'm willing to move it forward again, but they have to be the driver.
Right.
I don't believe it's up to us. And I can't put myself in their place at this time. I haven't been to any of their meetings, but they may also very well be sitting there saying, people spoke and we heard you, because it wasn't close. It was overwhelmingly defeated, and you may need to know why. Sure, there was only a handful of people there, but that handful may have very well been representative of the general public. And you need to know, why did it go that way? You need, I think you also need to, somebody needs to look at that if you're gonna revisit it. Why did they vote no? I mean,
I think they were voting.
you go, and we need to be careful. You talk about backpacks. I don't think that's the way to sell things to people. In fact, I think you might be even going down a road that you don't want to go there. You know, you've got to do things in the right way, and I'm not sure that that's the proper way. Maybe it can be done, but
I'm not saying to send the packet home with the information on why the water department's going to save $250,000 a year and be able to get you clean water. I'm saying, hey, oh, by the way, there's an information session being held at the high school auditorium, and it gets slipped into a backpack so parents know.
Well, they put it in everybody's bill. They put these things in everybody's bill, and I imagine, I mean, I know a lot of people now, they have automatic bill paying, and they may not be looking at them. So if that's a problem, but I mean, they've also been doing a lot of mailers. I mean, to me, they're almost I get these things, and I'm like, why wasn't this in the bill? I mean, I think it recently just got 3 different envelopes for them. I'm like, well, you're not saving anybody any money now by putting 3 different mailers in the mail when it could have all been put in one bill, unless, you know, maybe that's the reason why. Maybe there's enough people there now paying their bills that they figure, I don't know, anybody here automatic bill? Do you get one? I mean, you must get a statement. You must get a statement that says, yeah, you paid it, right? Yeah, yeah. So I mean, so it's there. So I mean, to me, I look at something like that, and I look at that as wasteful.
The other thing,
you know, that's it's just. But I'm willing to move it forward again if they're the driving force behind it. I don't think this board should be. But I mean, yes, you can bring it up. I mentioned earlier, one thing I think, and we need to at some point, I don't know how the rest of the town is, Mike, budget-wise, you know, but like Park and Rec, you know, we talked the other night, that's about 1/3 of our budget is water, to water all of these fields that they got. That's a big part of our budget right now. Yeah. And I don't know if there's any ways, you know, to get transfers later on if we need it. So otherwise, these fields may dry up if we don't have the money to water them.
Wait for rain.
And I'm sure that the schools in the same position. You know, I don't know how much of their budget water is. I mean, probably a very small amount, but I mean, out of the part of their budget that it comes from.
But see, Gary, to your point, these are good points. and I don't think people really digested.
I was aware there was, I was very aware there was an
You
increase
were.
coming.
No. Meaning, all right, it's going to now affect Parks and Rec. Now it's going to affect
They made that clear.
school.
I mean, they,
But to 56%, I don't think so.
Well, yeah, I mean,
don't think so.
in hindsight, we can say, well, they probably should have said you're gonna get a 15 or 17% increase in anyhow over the next 2 years. And this here, the savings, because the amount of savings they were talking about really wasn't all that much money, but it'd be enough to help keep the rates lower than to have it go to, from wherever it was, to
Yeah, plus
25%,
25 plus another,
25% and then compounded.
The other thing, Joe, I don't know, I think you mentioned it once, is, community service is big for the students at the high school. I don't know if, setting up like a, miniature babysitting thing where the kids can go into the cafeteria and play games with a bunch of high school students. Because if I've seen 20, I've seen 50. Well, I have kids. I can't leave my kids, and
they have done that,
Tried
somewhat
that.
in the past.
Yeah, and maybe
Well, I know we had it when we voted the school.
Well,
All those people showed
yeah,
up. I mean, we had it then.
There wasn't a problem when it was, let's build a school. That place was jammed.
Oh, I can remember going to.
People made,
We had 'em in the
people
back.
got babies.
I forget what it was before I was on the
I know.
board. I remember going to one meeting, I had to sit in the cafeteria, couldn't even
That's
make
right,
it in. I
in the
mean,
back TV,
you know,
yeah.
I forget what that was particularly for. I'm going back a ways,
But to your point, this
but
is
they had
this,
babysitting at that time.
yeah, it is an important vote. It really is, and I'm going to respectfully disagree with the statement that we shouldn't be driving this, because isn't it our job to listen to our citizens that are concerned and act on that concern?
The water
I think
commissioners and the electric commissioners are elected.
No, listen, I get it where it is happening, but if we have something that we can recommend after talking, i.e. my conversation with Nick, and Nick is certainly for it. If Nick had said, no, we're not going down this road, I get it. I agree. There's nothing I can do after that. But Nick is certainly for it. And with that being said, isn't it our responsibility to try on behalf of those citizens that are really upset about this?
I think you need to look at, there's some things also that you can do legally at annual town meeting and not at special. Do you know, Mike, if there's any, I think we need to find out, is this the type of thing that you can do at a special, fall town meeting is not regular, it's a special town meeting, and that possible that could be the type of thing that you only do at an annual town meeting. So somebody needs to check into that, I believe.
No, it was just a policy of the board not to bring up,
Well, I know where this has to go in front of the state, so that's why I didn't know if there was anything there. I know we've got our policies, yes, but we could say that's the reason for having, because the other question was, are we gonna have a fall town meeting, but all it takes is so many people to ask for a special town meeting, and if there's enough ratepayers that want it.
a lot of people asked for 200 for a special town meeting, I believe. But I know the finance committee wants to have one, because they want to bring up the special ed
Okay. Yeah.
fund. They're meeting with the school committee the 24th to discuss it. So we definitely want to do that.
I think.
But that I'll look into it to double check, but I think you can have bring up anything you want at any special or annual town meeting. There's no restrictions. It's just personal preference of the town.
Yeah, if you could look into that. Doug, go ahead.
I don't see anything, I think it'd be fine if we talked to Nick or the folks from the electric commissioners and asked them to have a meeting and take a vote and decide whether or not that's what they want to do. It's really not the Board of Selectmen's position to try to sway the decision of another board or committee. So I think that we can talk to them and ask them just to sit and take a vote at one of their meetings. about whether or not they wanna go forward with a merger. Because we can say, yeah, we're all for it, and they might say, well, we're not. And it doesn't matter that Nick says, yeah, I get all the votes. Well, that's fine, that's hearsay, and it's not that I don't Nick. But if we got an official vote from them at a meeting saying that they wanted to go forward with this, then everything's fine. And procedure has been.
Listen, it's only August, I mean, so I can certainly, ask Nick to come in and do that with David Schofield and anybody else that they feel is relevant here.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Nick said one thing to you, and I just had a conversation with Dave, and he said they didn't know what they wanted to do. So it's, I don't know.
Okay.
Whether
Well,
it's-
listen, I mean, if that, again, it's only August, so I'm fine, you know.
No, that's fine. I think that if they came forward and they said they wanted to put it on the warrant, I think it'd go 5-0 to put it on the warrant.
All right, so Mike, why don't we do that? Let's put him on, on the next agenda. Janet, let's invite David, Nick, Atal, and we'll get their buy-in and see where it takes us. All right, so moving on. Let's go to the warrants and minutes at the top. Got the minutes of June 10th and June 24th. I'll start with the minutes of June 10th. Any comments, issues, questions?
I haven't gone through it.
Anything on June 10th?
Motion to approve the minutes of June 10th and 24th as written.
Well,
Second.
speaking of it, we have a motion, a second, conversation.
Yeah, I wasn't at one, so I was planning on abstaining on one.
Yeah, me too.
We could separate the two, the motions.
Yeah, because I'm voting on
We're
the 10th,
opposites.
Yeah.
Got it. Got it.
Still might be 3 here to carry it through. I was just trying to save time.
Well, you know what?
I'll resend
No,
it.
no, you're right. I think that's fine. I think that's fine, because you're right, we need 3.
Yeah.
So if it's all right with you guys, it's only minutes, so. So we get a motion and a second, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain and abstain. For abstain on the 10th
Correct.
and abstain on the 24th, right? So just as a. All right. So we got a notice from the town clerk of the resignation of Matthew Newhall from FinCom. Matthew, thank you for all of your time and efforts that went into FinCom. We wish you the best.
There's an opening on FinCom.
Yep, there is an opening on FinCom. Mike, did you reach out to that woman? Remember we spoke about that woman who's looking to get on the board?
We gave David her
Hey, David, her
Okay, so she's
information.
talking? Okay,
I don't
fantastic.
talked, but he has the information.
All right. Well, as long as, he has it, it's kind of in his boat now, so. Just to get it out of the way, we got a request from Jeff and Maria's Ice Cream for a license for the location down at American Legion. Any questions on that? I know, Jenny, you have everything? Gave you the insurance? Everything? Okay. So as everyone knows, they just go down for the summer concert series dates. So that's all he's looking for, at this point. Correct, Janet?
Yes.
So for the summer concert series. And we're 2 in, right? So there's what, 4 days left? 5 days?
There's five.
5 left?
concerts left.
All right, so 5 dates left. All right, so just for those Sundays. All right, questions? No?
Just one quick question.
Yeah.
Just on the license agreement, it has executed it's got 2 different dates. It's got July 14th and August 25th, right? This license agreement is executed this July 14th, day of August 25th. So I don't really understand it.
It might be, we
I don't know if it.
we had
that's
one
the
that
one
was in
we're
the
signing,
packet
or-
and then another one.
See what I mean?
Yep.
I just think we probably should clarify that.
Those were the dates that he was.
Yeah, it's, if you go down
Bottom, yeah.
towards the bottom, it has July 14th through August 25th.
Yeah,
So I
that's what
think
I'm
he
seeing.
I
thought,
think he wrote that at the top.
yeah, I think he was just,
Same date in 3 different places.
So it would actually be July, execute this 15th day of July 2019.
It's basically up to us.
All right, I mean, you know, I think we know. Gina, do we need him to come in and redo that, or are we okay?
He wrote the dates.
That date's already
Dates are
gone
on
by
the-
and they.
Yeah, the dates are on the bottom. I mean, we know what he's looking at.
Were they there?
Yes,
Yeah.
I wasn't there.
So,
See, as
I don't think he was there on the 14th. I think he was
No, he
there.
wasn't.
Not the first date. I'm sorry. Yeah, no,
He was there yesterday.
He was there the 14th, but not the week before.
yeah,
correct. Yep.
The first.
I don't see that as a problem.
Cool. Yeah, I think we.
Yeah, he can initial the changes, when he comes to pick up his license if necessary.
All right.
Good enough.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the license agreement for Jeff and Maria's, 64 Elm Street, Georgetown, for use of the, stand at American Legion Park, July 14th through July 25th, 2019, from 1 to 7 p.m.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
All right.
We have to approve the common viction. The license agreement is really the park and rec. but,
Yeah, I mean, we're just
we have to
doing,
do
we're
the
doing a common vic.
common
Common
viction.
vic.
Is that what you said?
Yeah,
No, it's
that's
not
what
what
he
I
said.
but do we even
Thought I
have
heard
that?
that word.
I don't even see it. That's fine.
That too.
I know, right? All right, make a motion to approve the common victuals license for Jeff and Maria's at American Legion Park. Do we need dates? Same dates?
As printed.
No,
As
expires,
printed?
expires
Oh, yeah.
December 31st, 2019.
December 31st, 2019.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
In a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Fantastic.
All right.
All right, so we have, appointments coming up, but first we're gonna go to the Holiday Events Committee appointment. So out of the 5, spots, there are 3 people, that would like to get appointed to that committee. So if I could get a motion for that. Anybody?
How do you pronounce that middle name? Or,
Borgi.
Mr. Chair, I move to present, to, appoint to the, what are we calling it? The
Holiday Event Committee.
Holiday Event Committee, Joseph Bonavita, Jeff Borgine,
Yep.
Borgine, and David Schofield.
Second.
With term to expire, June 30th.
June 30th,
2020.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Just so everyone knows, these are just 3 of the 5 people.
Yeah.
Again, I'm leaving it to Jeff to see if he wants any family on that, as it is a kind of a special event. So Jeff is kind of talking to family about if any of them want to be on that board. So that's why there's only 3 of us for right now. But there will be 2 more, definitely coming. So okay. Any other discussion? Okay, if not, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right. So appointments. I thought we were done with appointments.
I thought, yeah.
Didn't I sign 3,500,000 pages of appointments?
Did we hold off on that Rock Pond committee, or did we do them?
The committees.
Janet may need to lead us on what we have to go.
Yeah, there was,
couple.
some that we had
We did
missed, or people, requested appointment.
Like cultural council? Is that what-
Yes,
yeah.
cultural council had 2, requested 2 members. I think they've already been approved by the state to be appointed, and they've been attending meetings, but we haven't appointed them.
Okay. All right, Ted, you're our expert. You want to tackle it?
I think we go down to,
It would be on page 4.
Cultural council, yeah.
well, first of all, we have 7, it looks like 7 open positions for the Commission on Equal Access. And there's only 7 seats.
Get them while they're hot.
Yeah, so we go to Cultural Council. I move that we appoint Patrick McGuire and Katie Doreen for 3-year terms set to expire June 30, 2022.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I think we go to, I'm just trying to find it. I thought we already did this. Merrimack Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization moved that we appoint John M. Cashel, Town Planner, for a term to expire on, 1-year term to expire on June 30, 2020.
Second.
Motion, a second, discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oh, I have a question, and, holy smoke, I don't have that many left to do, do
No, there's not that many, there's just
I? Oops. This is for
Peter
the
Burns on the,
Recreational Field Study Committee.
yes.
I move that we appoint Peter Burns to a 1-year term, set to expire June 30, 2020.
Second.
Motion, a second, discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Are we disbanding the school building committee?
Yep.
I move that we disband the school building committee
Second.
and all the listed members.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did we miss Rock Pond Bylaw Committee? The alternate?
Back on page 11.
Where are we?
Dr. Sal Testaverde?
Yeah, there's a alternate,
Oh,
Sal Testaverde.
what page is that? 11?
They really need
Oh, I
that
did,
many.
I did,
Need
okay.
that many
For the Rock Pond Bylaw Committee, I move that we appoint Dr. Sal Testaverde to a 1-year term, set to expire June 30, 2020,
Second.
As an alternate.
as an alternate.
Still second.
Motion, a second, discussion? If not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Okay, so back down to disbanding.
Now I'm back to Town Council. I thought we already did this.
I think
No, you
we
were
s-
disbanding the school building committee.
No, no, no,
Yeah,
no,
we already
no,
voted
no.
that.
I thought we already did Town Council. No, did we
No, we
vote off
didn't
on
vote
that?
on it because we were gonna, yeah, we deferred it because we were gonna chat a little bit about, whether we wanna approach, anybody else this year before we vote it.
I feel the same way, that we ought to at least have some discussion at some point. Keep them as
I
town
have,
council.
I found a database of all, legal counsels for all towns in the state. So, it's a little unwieldy right now. I was talking to Kip about it. We might be able to get it into a sorted, spreadsheet.
So, so my thought, just as a member, is, I think we probably, need to vote this and then really discuss it during the year. If it's gonna take that long to get all these names together and then, really approach anybody to have discussions with them and all that, it's gonna take a lot of time.
What? Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
When is the last time we went through this exercise?
I don't know.
Over 10 years ago.
Okay. Yeah, we need to do it.
Yep. So,
Well, if I might.
yeah, sure.
Here we have an appointment that's already expired. And we would be reappointing them for a year. So we might as well, in my mind, reappoint them for a year and take the year to discuss what you were saying.
Correct. That's exactly what I'm
Because
saying.
it's, this isn't a one meeting, you know, slam, bam, done.
Yep.
This takes time.
Right.
But then that's exactly what, but we have to do it, you know,
Yeah.
because I think we had the same discussion last year.
Exactly. We
Again,
did the same thing
agreed.
last time.
You're gonna have to conduct, you know.
So we're just
interviews.
gonna have to make sure it ends up on an
So
agenda.
Mike needs to put it on his whiteboard
Yep.
as a project, so that we don't forget.
Mike, put it on your whiteboard so we don't forget.
Mike, I'll be by tomorrow, I'll throw it on there for you.
So there's no reason though to, I mean, if we don't reappoint them, nothing changes.
There's still,
It just makes us.
until, just like the
Right.
other appointments, until.
So, yeah, nothing changes, so if we
They're
don't
holdovers.
vote it, we prods
have
us
the
to
time
actually
to
have the
discuss it.
conversation.
Yeah, it's a holdover, but I would, you know, I'd like to appoint him just so that it is in concrete.
Just procedurally.
Yeah,
It's
I'd
a
rather it not being hung out there for our town council. It's kind of a big deal. You know, so.
This is something that we should have been talking about during the year, and we didn't do it.
We said the same thing last year, so what's gonna be different this year? How are we
Mike's
gonna
gonna
do
put
it?
it on his whiteboard to make sure that we're reminded.
Listen, gents, you know, there's a lot of, I mean, how many days did we've been here past 10 o'clock, plenty of nights, you know, especially last year. There was a lot to talk about. There's only so much we can do, all right? So we'll get it on an agenda, now that it's now being talked about. And we'll put it on the whiteboard and we'll get it on an agenda and we'll seriously, you know, chat about it. But even that, what are we chatting about? We really have to figure out what we're chatting about and you know, who we want to possibly talk to. Go ahead, David.
Well, we gotta
I mean,
determine what our
Go on, Dan.
expectations are.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead. Alright. You've been doing this for quite some time. I'm sure you have fellow administrators out there that you could contact and say, how's it going with town council that you have, and maybe get you know, KP Law is one of the top 5 out there, and a lot of people are using them. What other firms are out there that people are using that they're happy with?
Well, I asked Mike already. The problem is it's KP Law.
Right, I don't think it's an indication that we're unhappy with them, it's just more of us doing due diligence.
No,
and
that's
doing
exactly
we
what
should
it
do.
is.
And no part of my saying that I'm not unhappy with them, I'm just trying to.
No,
Well, normally, what you do is you pick a few law firms and ask them if they're interested. They have to show an interest in us, as well as, you know, would you like to submit your credentials for us to consider you as legal counsel? That's how you go through the process. They may, you know, they may not want us, or their legal fees may be astronomical.
Sure.
And we have to decide why if it's just an exercise, then it's an exercise. But we have to determine why we would make a change, or be desirous of making a change.
So how about we'll have a discussion first, and then, you know, we'll map out a plan.
Right.
Okay, since now we'll have a year, we'll map out a plan and execute, you know, based on the plan. Okay.
Mhm.
So,
Sounds like a plan.
all right. So with that being said, I mean, do I hear a motion to approve town council?
So moved. No, I make a motion to appoint KP Law as our legal counsel for a term 1 year, term to expire 6/30/2020, with the requirement that it's on Mike's whiteboard.
Second.
All right, motion second. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey,
Hey.
And did you mention Beth Lazonis for the cultural for Georgetown Cares? Was that on your list?
I didn't see that on.
I didn't hear that.
I didn't see that.
There's no openings on Georgetown
Yeah.
Cares yet.
Oh.
I had-
Oh, no,
Okay.
that's right. We have to, I think Pam Lundquist is gonna come before us, and there will be a request from Georgetown Cares to expand that committee from 5 to 7. And then Beth would be
Did you
the
get
6th appointee,
Yes.
and we'd be looking for one
Okay.
other.
All right. Mike, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I have two important items. Today was the deadline for submittals for the National Ave RFP. We got no submittals. Seven businesses or individuals pulled the package from our website, but nobody made any submittals.
Did you ever get any feedback on that?
Well, I haven't. I intend to contact anybody who will answer me and ask why they didn't submit.
All right.
And I've already put a call into KP Law to see what our options are. You know, I suspect price was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
They were, our town assessors assessed them for tax purposes, 1.3 million and 899,000. We did a appraisal over 2 years ago when it was one single lot, and then we got two prices. One was $327,000, and because of the problem with the access, and the appraiser said if we solved the access problem, it would have been worth 1.2 million. So that's
So has the access problem been solved?
no. It actually changed hands.
Right.
And Mike, if I could piggyback on that feedback, so I did also talk to someone, regarding that same feedback, that there's no way we would get anything near that. He had two interesting points, and that is, how can someone make a bid on the property when you have a huge amount of wetlands that are going in the middle? So even though it's split, he actually said you're not going to get any substantial offer without the licenses in hand, right? Because how can you bid on that property not knowing if you're going to be able to get the necessary permits to actually build anything? Secondly, is the access. If there's no relevant access, how can we ask for that amount of money? He actually said that, and I'm not going to throw numbers, but he actually said that, this is a piece of land right now that someone could take a chance on to gain the necessary licenses and hopefully get access and things of that nature, but someone will be really taking a risk. Therefore, if they're taking that much of a risk, we're not going to get what we're looking for.
Well,
So
they didn't read the whole package because P&S is subject to permitting.
But his point is that he doesn't think anybody would really be interested in exploring that whole thing.
Spending the money on the permitting for a lawyer and all that.
Yeah, and just the comfort of, all right, this is going to take a lot of work, to go through this. Honestly, I think we also have a reputation as a town for being really difficult, in terms of building.
Yes.
It is what it is, and again, nobody's going to take a huge risk on outlaying any money, whether it's just a bid or not, and going through that much work and battling with everybody that they have to battle with, to do what they want to do. So I think we got to regroup and figure out what we're going to do from here. you know, I think we maybe completely overestimated the value. So go ahead, Don.
Mike, have we, probably not, but do we have a plan of maybe contacting the abutting owners to see if they have any interest?
No, because we were doing it,
Right.
you have to do it by 30B. And the representative of the abutting owners pulled the plans.
Yep.
Have they, I mean, do you know,
Yeah.
did they?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I guess that's what I was asking.
Yeah, yeah, they're well aware of
What's
what we're
going on?
doing.
That's what I'm talking
Hmm?
about. That's what I'm talking about.
All right, anything else, Mike?
Yes, since we last met, I just want to make sure all the board members are up to date regarding the firefighters union. As of on June 21st, the AFSCME Council 93, the parent organization of the local, notified the state's Department of Labor Relations that it was disclaiming interest in representing the bargaining unit of firefighters employed by the town of Georgetown. And they asked the DLR to revoke its certification. By letter dated July 2nd, 2019, the DLR notified the town that ASME certification as the exclusive representative of the town's firefighters had, pursuant to its request, been revoked effective July 1. I notified the firefighters by memo today that the town will no longer be deducting union dues from employee paychecks. So they're now covered by the town personnel policies. There's no exclusive bargaining unit. They're free to go out and find another bargaining unit. I think we talked, well, I don't need to add anything more.
All right, Mike, thank you for that. I actually wanted to throw this out to the board. Do we want to invite Chief Mitchell in for the next meeting as far as, okay, you know what, no more union, get feedback as to what his new department looks like, you know, what his goals are. Do we want any discussion with Chief, or are we comfortable with kind of, you know, letting him now do what he has to do and whatever? Go ahead, Gary.
I would think that would follow along the lines of following up on the MRI report. I mean, that was about.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
I said I believe that would be along the lines of just following up on different stages of where we're going as a town on the MRI
Yeah,
report that we got.
Well,
mean,
we talked a little bit about that this morning. Yeah, he's gonna be implementing the MRI study. That's his roadmap. But he does still have some issues to deal with.
Couple left.
Yeah.
On the agenda items.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so
I let that play out first.
okay, so we'll let that stand. You know, and certainly if anybody on the board has questions for him, contact him directly or through Mike, and you know, we'll be fine. Mike, anything else?
No.
All right. So Kip alerted me to, you know, once again the gates being open at West Main Street. Mike, have you let Mike know?
Yeah, you're on that email.
I saw the email today, yeah.
So gates are wide open. I think you said all the signs are down. There's no signs saying
No
no.
signs. No open gates. West Main Street.
And there's no lock.
Dog park, you know, in back of the church.
That's East Main, isn't it?
It's East Main and West Main, yeah.
East Main, thank you.
My
I
bad.
was wondering why you were.
My bad. So it's East Main.
That's what I'm here for, Joe.
Thanks, Bill. I knew you were here for something.
It's not my good looks.
I had a neighbor tell me the same thing today.
I mean, this board has requested, you know, that many times. It's a huge liability to have people on that property. And I thank Kip for, you know, actually, you know, going down. So I was gonna say, so with that being said, Gary, do you have any feedback for us in terms of, is there someone responsible for that?
It has been discussed. I was with Jim Wednesday night, just as a follow-up. Wednesday night, we were at the planning board. We had to cancel our meeting Wednesday night. We were to meet. But we had to cancel it because of the planning board, and we wouldn't have had a quorum. We had Gail there, and the planning board gave us the okay to downsize the project, which means we'll now be able to bid it and hopefully get it somewhat finished up. So I did see the text that you sent to Jim. We will bring it up at our next meeting. He asked me to take it under responsibility. I talked with Mike briefly about it. You know, he said, do we want to send Peter over there to lock it up or what? We've locked it up, and they go back and they find that it's not. As far as who's removing the signs, I mean, you know, I don't know. But I mean, here's what I would say is, I mean, we get some chain, we can lock it up again. I mean, I don't know what type of chain's on it and that. We'll bring it up. But once this thing gets bid and construction starts again, I would see it then. It's gonna be the people that are there. It's gonna be a construction site. Right now, it's really not a construction site. I don't, yeah, it's a liability. I don't think any more than the rail trail. People are using the rail trail. But once the bid goes out, and hopefully we're successful in getting somebody to come in and finish it up, it's gonna be their responsibility to make sure it's gonna be a construction site. They're gonna have to make sure it's locked up when they leave at night, and them things are there. So, but we'll bring it up at our next meeting. If not, we'll ask, you know, we can reach out to Peter, we can reach out to the police department to start keeping a better eye on it. The only thing I can say is there are members that have to get in there. I know that they probably on an as-needed basis, you know, they're watering the grass up there so it doesn't all dry up and not be of any use when it's time to be reopened. So.
And what you guys are working on is the parking lot. Getting paved and all that, right? Part of it?
No, it's not gonna be paved.
Just rock.
It's,
Just
what's happened
or
was.
whatever is happening up there. There was-
What's your question pertaining to what the future
what the
plans are?
No, what the construction is in the near
Yeah,
future.
it's gonna be basically finishing up what the Park and Rec wants. Yeah, I think we've gotta bring some of the parking lot up to grade is the basis of it. There's an area that may need to be seeded. If I remember correctly from seeing the plans at the planning board the other night, they were gonna put a skate park. We've kinda taken that off them there for now. And so that area will, you know, just have to be, I think, graded and perhaps seeded.
There's
Gail's gonna,
equipment there, though,
Gail's
Gary,
gonna,
isn't Isn't there the skate equipment?
I think it's along the edge as you go up there.
Yeah, last time he
yeah.
was here, he said it's been there for so long now, it's deteriorating and it's gonna have to be thrown away.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Someone's gonna throw it away, though. I don't want it just sitting there and then having.
No, that will be all part of it being open. I mean, and you know, when we left the other night, we made it known that Gail's gonna have to also approach conservation, because, you know, those are basically the two that you're gonna get the planning board and conservation to sign off.
Yeah.
So once that construction starts, I mean, we'll make it especially known to Gail that you know, the place needs to be locked up, marked as a construction site. You know, those are maybe some of the signs that were up there. They may have been there from previous construction. I don't know what was there that's
we
missing.
as a board had requested one last year to be made and put up. And
Oh,
it
yeah?
was chained and the sign was up and then.
Yeah, well, that's
I
what I
sorta remember
understand.
a
We've discussed it, and
Yeah.
I just get told they keep going back and finding that someone's taking it down. So, but if it has to be, we'll get Peter's guy to lock it up and see if maybe they're not using the right chain. I don't know.
Yeah, let's be proactive on it, because we
Okay.
certainly can't have
Yeah.
people in there doing, you know, what they want. I know people are anxious and everything else, but we gotta,
They use it
we gotta
anyhow.
follow protocol, huh?
Said they use it anyhow.
Well, yeah, but once it gets to be a construction
Yeah,
site, you can't,
but if
yeah.
it's locked up, I think isn't there a difference? If it's locked up and someone's in there and I mean, is there a difference if they say get
Oh, yeah.
hurt
Oh, yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to not?
Trespassing.
So, I would think, but with today's laws, who knows?
Well, that's
You know,
what-
that's sort of why I asked.
So signage, maybe
Because
Peter's.
all we're trying to do is
I'll try to
limit
reach out to Peter
liability
before the
to
meeting.
town.
That's
all we're trying to do.
That's it, and that's what our responsibility is, you know, as a board. You know, I would love for everybody to bring their dog down and enjoy it and whatever, but it was just not there, unfortunately, you know, so.
I mean, there's people, I mean, if, you know, I mentioned it the other night at planning board, I mean, that was one of, I think with our meeting, we had a joint meeting with them, and the place was full of people using the dog park, wanting to know when it was gonna be open, I mean, that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, post on Facebook about it, if they use it.
Yeah, I
And
know,
again,
that's,
I'll say, if anybody wants to be on, there's open positions there, and I'm just waiting to get off when someone comes on, I'm only supposed to be temporary.
Well, G Mellon's got a bunch of trash barrels down there too, so somebody requested that there's trash barrels down there, so for a site that's not supposed to be used,
I know,
why
for
do we need
trash
trash
barrels.
barrels?
Okay.
that's absolutely true.
I don't understand why that's done.
All right.
But anyway.
So moving forward, gentlemen. So you know, because of the holiday, and again, we're meeting once every month. I would like to request that we have to, you know, per Mike's new contract, we need to get his goals in place. I'm hoping to do it actually by the end of the month. So I'm sorry for the late notice. It's the 15th. I'm hoping maybe give you guys a week. I'm sure everyone has some goals in mind already. But if you can email them to me, what I'd like to do is sit down with Mike by month end per what we kind of outlined. And it's, you know, moving forward is the challenge. I mean, we only meet once a month, so it might be difficult, you know, to do. But email me what your goals are, you know, maybe 1 to 5 of them, okay? And what I'll do is I'll tally them, I'll sit down with Mike, and then at our next board meeting on the 12th or whatever it is, we'll then review everything, just so we can have it in place, right, Mike? Is that okay?
Yes.
Because I know Mike is anxious to get these goals, you know, on paper, so.
Did last year, Mike, did we use like a template? Did we all do it the same way? Or do you remember?
No.
Well, we have that same, you know, template that we use for his his review.
That has goals on it.
And that has, it does have a goal section at the
Yeah.
end, but again, nobody filled it in this year. So, you know, therefore, you know, the goals are kind of important for Mike to move forward. So as much as we might want Mike to do this, this, and this, it'll be easier for him if he had the goals on paper, so he can say, okay, when next year, when his review comes along, all right, these were my goals for the year. You know, how did I do stacking up against these goals? Mike,
Sounds
anything to
like-
add about that?
Well, I did contact a consultant that would be willing to lead us through a goal-setting session, but I don't know that anybody's willing to give up a Saturday morning in the summer to do something like that.
We'll do it. If it's a benefit.
I'm not.
I was gonna say for me it's a hell no, but
I don't think that.
I said I would look into it.
Yeah, no, I think this board is astute enough that we can put goals together. Okay, so you know, let's give it a whirl, you know, and let's do it that way. So if you guys can take a week or so and by say the beginning of that, say the 15th, 22nd, say by the 25th or so, which is a week from Wednesday, should give you enough time to get some goals together and send them to me, and then I'll put them together. Again, I'll put them together, meet with Mike, outline them, and then report back here. I could even email it out before we meet, but you know, certainly on the 12th, we'll talk about it. Okay, as an agenda item. Okay. I also wanted to update everybody on the rec center. There are 3 events that were planned by that board, and the first one was actually on Friday. It was actually a really cool event. From what I hear, I was not in attendance as I had something else going on, but there were a little over 100 kids that showed up to this first event. which was a glowing success. And I say glowing because that's what it was. It was a glow party. It was like at night, and they had all these glow sticks, and kids got to go around. But it was a really good experience, for everybody who attended. They will have 2 other events during the summer. In the meantime, they are doing a great job, that committee. And I don't know if anybody's been up, but I welcome you to go and visit, the rec center. They painted the walls. Everything has been donated. They put everything in place. There's a lot of things for everybody to do. And, again, so far so good. In the meantime, also, they're looking to, corporate donations and doing all that work to raise funds. In addition, the application is in with the state for some state aid to go towards that rec center, which is also, we're told, looking pretty good as a grant. So things are really moving in the right direction. It's really positive. People are really excited about it. So again, if you have some time, you want to visit, go take a look. They're doing a great job.
What age range?
Right now it's grades 6 through 9.
Okay.
That we're in.
When we did try that teen center thing before, it was that age group that responded to.
Yep. What they're also looking to do, though, is it's grades 6 through 9, but what they're looking to do is sporadically have like high school nights, because there's been actually a really good amount of kids that are interested at the high school level to utilize the space. For example, they're looking at maybe a battle of the bands. So kids that really play musical instruments and things of that nature, they're possibly going to have a night for battle of the bands, and the kids can go in there and do that. Get some pizza, whatever they want. So it's really for a design to get everyone together, and that's really what's promoting. Online got a lot of good press on it. Parents are excited, the kids are excited. There were some high school kids also, by the way, that volunteered time to help with the event. That's also something that we're looking at. We're being everybody involved with it, to even help if this thing gets off the ground, right, for community hours and things of that nature. So there's a lot of good things going on there. I'll certainly keep everybody posted as it goes along. One of the things on Mike's report was that we did have a meeting. It was myself, Mike, and a few of the people on that committee, as there are some things that we were looking to establish in terms of, if someone donates some funds, where is the money going, right? How is it allocated? A lot of, say, corporate donations, they're going to want to see if it's a nonprofit. So do they have a nonprofit status? So there's a lot of that background stuff, that was being discussed. That there's been a lot of discussion. Erin Duggan's been doing, just a wonderful job in really staying ahead of that. Carol Jacobs is doing a fantastic job, with communications with everybody on that as well. And there's also, there are a number of different people on that committee. I'm not going to go through all of them, there's too many, but everyone's putting in a lot of time, to get this thing off the ground. They should be commended, so they're doing a great job. So, as things go along, I'll try to keep everybody posted as much as I can, with it, but it's going in the right direction, certainly.
Good to hear.
Yeah. And by the way, one of the reasons why I wanted to bring that up is they are going to be attending our next meeting. They are going to come and give that same update as far as where they're at, but also, the whole funding thing, right? That's what this is about. Everyone likes the idea, but how is it going to get funded? And we're going to put a lot of stuff on the table, and have an open discussion about it. Answer questions, and hopefully by that point, everyone will be comfortable enough, to kind of wrap their arms around it and hopefully get behind it. Okay. So, Janet, you'll have Aaron probably reaching out to you, to get on the agenda for that. Okay.
If I remember right,
So,
I may be wrong, but I thought everybody on the board was okay with a rec center. The concern was the funding.
correct. And then that goes for FinCom as well. Everyone you know, if you remember, I mean, you know, starting with the chairman, you know, Ed is certainly behind it, but he has real concerns about the funding and how it's gonna, you know, sustain, you know, its viability over time. And again, it's, you know, being discussed and tackled, and, you know, there are models in place that, see, the thing is, they're gonna present to us, but, you know, gentlemen, you gotta understand, it's a moving thing. I mean, they haven't really started yet, so when it comes time to presenting numbers and how they're gonna raise funds, get corporate donations, grants, you know, they're identifying all that. So you gotta go into it with an open mind, saying, okay, there's all this stuff out there, you know, where they can raise funds. But, you know, until they get it moving, and it, like I said, it's almost like a moving target, you know, in terms of how they're gonna do it over time. So, but like I said, they're doing an awful lot of work, you know, behind the scenes, and they're doing a great job. So, I look forward to seeing them in the next meeting. So,
Will anyone from FinCom be at the
I'm
meeting?
sure, you know, that they're gonna invite, you know, people from FinCom. You know, one of the, as a matter of fact, one of the people helping out is Sheila Ruth, who's already on FinCom. You know, so, cool. You know, I'm sure, you know, she'll be there too. So, all right, with that, it's 10:20, so, why don't we get out of here? So, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second. Okay, motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, everyone.